Chapter 1226. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, a shocking treasure. How powerful is your trump card? He asked. His hands groped on the door, searching for the key to enter. You'll know when the time comes. Qin Hao kept Ning K in suspense. TSK, isn't it just a big dog that likes to crawl under people's pants? K, thought to herself. She despised the dog spirit's sinister battle style. Wasn't it too dirty? Until now, Kair did not know about the existence of the Dharma idol. She thought that the dog spirit, who had never shown himself, was all that Qin Hao was hiding. At this moment, a strong sense of worry welled up in her heart. If Qin Hao released the dog spirit to help her, what would Qin Hao do? Who would be able to stop the strongest old man with a broken sword? Then the answer to the question was obvious. Brother-in-law, are you going to fight him alone? No, you'll die. K. Er's heart clenched as she grabbed Qin Hao's arm. Qin Hao smiled slightly and appeared very calm. At this moment, Ning Chaofan felt his body tremble violently. The old man with the broken sword was even more ferocious than the coffin-carrying man. He was a 5th-level martial emperor and was undefeatable. It was hard to imagine how Qin Hao had the confidence to fight the old man alone. The gap between them was 1.5 levels. Even if they had 2 souls, it would be too absurd for Qin Hao to win. However, his teacher's attitude was as steady as Mount Tai. Found it. As he spoke, Qin Hao's body shook violently. His powerful consciousness covered the temple's door. Although it was concealed by an emperor-grade array, it did not escape Denda's eyes. At the bottom right of the left door, there was a sunken spot at knee height. The spot was blocked by a cloud of dust. Just as Li Wanji had said, it was the keyhole to open the door. Qin Hao's spiritual power penetrated the dust and probed inside. He could clearly feel that the keyhole was connected to the array of the entire door. It was the Eye of the Array. With a low shout, Qin Hao gathered his qi and sucked in the dust. Dust particles flew out continuously, and the keyhole became clearer. Then, Qin Hao pushed the rusty, tattered key into it. Buzz. Large ripples appeared on the gate's array formation. Are you ready? Qin Hao turned to look at K, and Ning Chaofan. Miss K, please stay by my side. Ning Chaofan was extremely nervous. Charge. Qin Hao's words. The temple that had guarded the inheritance for hundreds or thousands of years. Was. For hundreds or even thousands of years. The temple. The temple. The temple. Whoosh. Was translation. Was translation is was translation was and was translation were to translation was of translation. Bastard. The old man with the broken sword let out an unprecedentedly furious roar. His body was like a sharp sword radiance as he madly flew through the door. The coffin-carrying man was the third to make his move. Just as he took his first step, he was tripped by something. His body wobbled, and his head slammed into the door that was opening with a loud bang. Sorry, I slipped. On the ground, the black-clothed subordinate stretched out one of his legs and laughed mischievously. He looked through the crack in the door and saw Ning Chaofan and Qin Hao running like the wind. He thought to himself, Great master, young master, this is all I can do for you. Damn it. The coffin bearer used all his strength to open the door. If not for the fact that he was worried that the inheritance of the Empress would be stolen, he would have smashed the head of the subordinate in black and turned him into ashes. But there was no time. The coffin bearer was like a bear running out of the forest. His footsteps rumbled as he chased after Qin Hao and the old man with the broken sword. He was too slow. Ahead of him were the sword spirit martial artist and the big hammer martial artist. Run, run, run. He ran without stopping to catch his breath. Qin Hao pushed his water wind steps to the extreme. The soles of his feet glowed with a crystalline light. He was like the wind and the turbulent river. He did not even care if there were any other traps or arrays in the temple. He only had one thought, to be the first to reach the inheritance. Behind him were Ning Chaofan and Kair. Even though the three of them had started running at the same time, They had already pulled a distance of nearly 300 meters away from Qin Hao. This distance was covered in an instant. Behind them was the old man with the broken sword, who was as swift and fierce as a flying sword. He was extremely furious and unleashed his cultivation without holding back. In the blink of an eye, he had already caught up to Ning Chaofan and Care. Teacher, run. I'll stop him. Ning Chaofan's eyes were red. He roared and attacked with all his might. Although there was a huge gap between him and the old man with the broken sword, Ning Chaofan would be satisfied if he could slow down the old man's pace, just like how he stopped the Liu Palace. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. He didn't give Ning Chaofan any time to summon his soul. As soon as the old man with the broken sword finished speaking, his flying body suddenly disappeared into thin air. Whoosh! When he reappeared, he was standing in front of Qin Hao. The stone tiles on the ground were shattered. Unparalleled sword chi wreaked havoc around him, blocking Qin Hao's path. So fast, Qin Hao dispersed the power of the Waterwind Steps. A fifth-tier martial emperor was indeed strong. It was not something that could be compensated by cultivation technique. Kid, you're so sinister. You want to take all the benefits for yourself? The old man with the broken sword released a hawk-like gaze. Qin Hao did not dare to move. Qin Hao spread his hands and shrugged. I was afraid that there was a trap here, so I rushed in first to take a look. Why didn't I see you so eager before? The old man with the broken sword snorted coldly. Believe it or not, Qin Hao could not be bothered with him. At this moment, he scanned the interior of the temple. The interior was like a church. It was very long, very clean, and spotless. However, the path was not narrow. Along the way, there were giant chests made of dazzling gold. They were the same color as the armor of the 12 palaces. However, the density of the material was less than 1,000th of the armor. Some of the chests were overturned on the ground. Some dazzling pearls and gems rolled on the ground. Among the gems and treasures, there was no lack of weapons of various grades. There were king weapons, venerable weapons, sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and even martial emperor weapons. There were countless chests like this from the entrance of the temple to the end of the church. The number was shocking to the extreme. Even with Dinda's steady temperament, he was shocked. There was a huge golden chest that contained several king and venerable artifacts, as well as an emperor artifact. With so many chests, how many emperor weapons were there? They were simply immeasurable treasures. They were enough to cause chaos in the continent's divine soldier. Once taken out, it would definitely cause a great war. Of course, these were just small things. When Qin Hao, the old man with the broken sword, Ning Chaofan, and Er's gazes all landed on a high platform at the end of the church, they realized that these treasures were insignificant. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1227. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Who Dared to Move? Although it was called a high platform, it was actually less than 2 meters tall. It was not as tall as Qin Hao, but in this flat church, it was enough to stand out. 1 second to remember, read, book / pavilion wonderful. Free reading without pop-up windows. In the center of the high platform sat a person, or rather, a corpse. The corpse was wearing a red robe. Hundreds or even thousands of years of wear and tear couldn't erase the color of the red robe. It was as majestic and proud as she was when she was alive. Judging from her clothes, this person was a woman. It was Empress Xiantian. At this time, a soft white ball of light was suspended 1 foot above the head of the corpse. Spiritual energy surged in the ball of light, exuding a majestic aura. It seemed to be vast and boundless, and the will of an emperor rushed over. It was the Empress inheritance. It was imprinted with everything about the Empress when she was alive. Refining, array formations, enchantment, as well as combat skills and profound experience. Just like the memories of Dinda that Qin Hao carried with him when he was reborn, it was a priceless treasure. But the difference was that Qin Hao was reborn with the protection of a divine artifact, and his soul wasn't destroyed. No matter how powerful Empress Xiantian was, She couldn't fight against the heavenly Tao. Her soul completely returned to nothingness, leaving only the unconscious inheritance, waiting for the fated person to inherit it. In addition, on the left side of the corpse, a sword was suspended half a foot above the ground. This sword didn't have a trace of pressure. It was abnormally quiet and looked sparse and ordinary. The body of the sword wasn't outstanding either. There was only a layer of water-like halo that flashed again and again. Its appearance was very similar to Shao Han's jade water sword. From a female's point of view, it was very beautiful. That was all. However, no one dared to underestimate the power of the sword beside the Empress. On the surface, it was very calm. If someone were to touch it this time, they would definitely face a disaster. The Arch Artifact, a 9th grade The Arch Artifact. The old man with the broken sword was breathing abnormally, as if it was very difficult for him. His 2 old fists clenched so hard that his blood vessels bulged. His heart surged with monstrous waves. His steps moved forward half a foot uncontrollably. He had the urge to reach out and grab the sword on the stage. This sword was undoubtedly an The Arch Artifact, and it was definitely the most powerful 9th grade The Arch Artifact among the Arch Artifacts. In fact, after reaching the Emperor level, Emperor Yuan's weapons could no longer be evaluated by low grade, middle grade, high grade, supreme grade, or peerless grade. Instead, it was changed to forging. First Forged Emperor Artifact, second Forged Emperor Artifact, third Forged Emperor Artifact, etc. The 9 refinements matched the 9 realms of Emperor Yuan. With every increase in realm, the power of the 9 refinements would increase several times. Since Empress Xian Tian was a 9-star Great Monarch, her weapon was naturally of the 9th refinement. Furthermore, as a peak Monarch grade weapon forger, her Monarch swords were definitely stronger and fiercer than the other 9-star Great Monarchs. Even the 12 Golden Palace's puppets were so powerful. The old man with the broken sword was really about to suffocate. He was so excited that he was suffocating. This was because he was a sword cultivator, the purest sword cultivator. He had never cultivated any unorthodox techniques. Qin had not care. He merely took a glance at the Emperor's sword and completely lost interest. Not to mention that he had the only divine artifact on the continent, the Great Void Divine Cauldron. Even the Sunset Divine Bow and the Sunset Arrows that he had nurtured for 300 years in his previous life were not weaker than this 9th grade Emperor's sword. Therefore, Qin Hao really did not have the slightest bit of interest. In the eyes of the Pill Emperor, it could only be called a weapon that was not bad. It was still 1 refinement away from the Sunset God Bow, not to mention the Great Void Cauldron. At this moment, Qin Hao's gaze was looking at the right side of the corpse. On the right side of Empress Xian Tian's corpse, there was also a special thing floating. A book, a very thick book. On it were 4 big words: enchantment, demon, doubt, grace. Boom! At this moment, the old man with the broken sword also looked over, his body trembling violently. Enchantment Dao book. This was probably the most valuable and precious item in Empress Xian Tian's life. One did not even need to use one's brain to guess that it recorded everything about the enchantment theurgy. It turned out that the armor of the warriors of the 12 Golden Palaces was not made with the usual refining methods of the continent. Instead, it was strengthened with spiritual power by the enchantment theurgy, turning the armor into a loyal warrior with flesh, blood, and even a soul. This was such a shocking method, it could be called a divine skill. I still trusted Li Wanji too easily. Qin Hao sighed in his heart. After seeing the Enchantment Dao book, he was completely sure that Li Wanji would not give the Empress inheritance to Han or Kair. Li Wanji tricked Qin Hao into opening the door for him. It was all for himself. Since this cunning old man knew about enchantment, he must have come for the Enchantment Dao book. Empress Xian Tian's inheritance was most suitable for Li Wanji. How could he give it to others? But now that things had come to this, Qin Hao could not turn back. He could only try his best to reduce his losses and think about how to get the most out of Li Wanji. Oh my God, that's the power of inheritance. In just a few seconds, the warriors who fell behind, including the coffin bearers, all caught up. They were shocked by the scene in front of them. An emperor-level inheritance. There really was an emperor-level inheritance in the temple. Not only that, there was a sword beside the corpse. Without a doubt, it was an emperor's sword. Especially when the warriors saw the enchantment Tao book, they were extremely shocked. In the divine wilderness continent, craftsmen were a noble profession. But out of 10,000 craftsmen, there might not be one enchantment master. In the entire southern region, they only knew one person who knew about enchantment. Although this person was the only one, he was also the strongest. He was the spirit emperor, Ling Yangzi. To be precise, it was more appropriate to call him Li Wanji. Li Wanji had created many talents and powerful figures in the southern region with just the coiling dragon wonder. If they obtained this enchantment Tao book, wouldn't they be able to compete with Li Wanji? That's not right. Did we misunderstand Li Wanji? He's not the spirit emperor. Someone couldn't help but say, "What do you mean?" someone asked. If he's the spirit emperor, then who is Empress Xiantian, who died here? I've never heard of Empress Xiantian on the continent before. Maybe she's the real spirit emperor? Someone replied. The hidden dragon mystery realm was hidden behind the coiling dragon wonder. If the spirit emperor was nearing the end of his lifespan, it was very likely that he would choose to return to the coiling dragon wonder he created and die. It was very logical. Who cares? Anyway, as long as we get the power of inheritance and the enchantment Tao book, we'll be the next spirit emperor. We'll be the most powerful enchantment master on the continent and be respected by everyone. A warrior with a huge hammer on his shoulder roared crazily. This roar seriously stimulated everyone. The eyes of the martial artists turned red as an unparalleled killing intent filled the air. Just a moment ago, everyone had been united. But from this moment on, they were no longer partners, no longer comrades with their backs against each other. They were enemies. As long as they stood in the way of the inheritance and the enchantment Tao book, they would all go to hell. Let's see who dares to move. Boom! The old man with the broken sword took a step forward. His short body seemed to have turned into an invincible primitive giant. He blocked in front of everyone alone, and his aura made it impossible for 10,000 people to pass through. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1228. There was no need to fight. Just the overwhelming aura of a fifth-level martial monarch was enough to make all the martialists take a step back. Their faces were filled with fear as their feverish minds cleared up a little. The inheritances belong to those who are capable. Weigh your own abilities before making a move, and see if you can get out of here alive. The old man with the broken sword roared as sword light surged around him and sword intent wreaked havoc. Everyone, including Qin Hao, felt as if their bodies were being sliced apart by the sword light. Strong, too strong. The power of this sword intent was unstoppable. The martialists turned pale. The old man with the broken sword was right. No matter how powerful the treasure was, they had to weigh whether they could take it away alive. There was no hope of stopping a fifth-level martial monarch or Yuan venerate martialist. At that moment, some people retreated. Life was more precious than the inheritance that they couldn't obtain. There were many treasure chests in the church. Taking one out and turning around to have a limitless future was already a rare opportunity. However, some people wouldn't leave so easily, such as the Sword Soul Martialist, the female Black Python Martialist, and the Big Hammer Martialist. They had source souls and wanted to try and get a share of the loot. It seems like you're all bent on courting death. The old man with the broken sword roared as a powerful sword intent swept out and enveloped the Sword Soul Martialist. The Sword Soul Martialist looked up and saw the space above his head distort severely. A sword formed by sword intent forcibly tore through space and descended upon his head. He roared and hurriedly condensed his own sword intent to block the sword. However, the difference in cultivation base was huge, and his own sword intent wasn't as pure as the old man with a broken sword. His resistance was as weak as a lamb. With a swoosh, The sword cleaved down on the sword soul martialist's head and tore him apart on the spot. The female black python martialist didn't dare stay any longer. She screamed and ran back while hugging her head. You win. The big hammer martialist stomped his foot, creating a pit in the ground. He was extremely indignant. However, indignation was nothing in the face of absolute strength. The big hammer martialist turned around and left. What followed was a massacre as they snatched the treasure chests of the other martialists. At the moment, only Qin Hao, the coffin bearer, and Ning Chao Fan remained. If Ning Chao Fan didn't leave, the subordinates in black wouldn't either. Why? Do you all want to try the old man's sword? The old man with the broken sword narrowed his eyes to stare at Qin Hao and the coffin bearer. And I want to try, Qin Hao said coolly. Thump. The old man's heart skipped a beat, and so did the coffin bearer. Qin Hao's answer was actually so straightforward. Ha ha ha. The old man with the broken sword burst into laughter. A level 8 Yuan venerate martialist with a sword soul couldn't even withstand the might of his sword. Qin Hao, a mere Yuan monarch, wanted to try his sword? Who do you think you are? Qin Hao said indifferently. He didn't ascend to the heavens. He was very clear-headed. But if you're capable of breaking 2 array formations, why didn't you break them? Ha! How arrogant! The coffin bearer was furious. He raised his hand, and a huge black coffin appeared in his palm. Pung! The coffin smashed into the ground and was even taller than Qin Hao. Although you are arrogant, I also want to fight for this inheritance. The coffin bearer smiled at the old man with the broken sword. He wasn't in a hurry to deal with Qin Hao. The old man with the broken sword frowned. His expression was no longer relaxed. Killing Qin Hao might be as easy as killing a chicken. He might not even be bothered to draw his sword. However, the coffin bearer had interfered. He was a level 1 Yuan monarch and had the support of the soul coffin. His source spirit could fuse with his weapon, so his combat strength was definitely not weaker than a level 3 Yuan monarch. He might even be able to contend with a level 4 Yuan monarch. This was enough to attract the attention of the old man with the broken sword. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't have bothered to talk nonsense and would have just attacked. However, the old man with the broken sword knew that even if he killed the coffin bearer, there was still the inheritance and the emperor's sword behind him. He had to be in his best condition to fuse with the inheritance. If not, the fusion would fail and he would be obliterated by the inheritance. That included the emperor's sword. It wasn't easy to tame it either. If the coffin bearer accidentally damaged his foundation, the old man with the broken sword would be at great risk. This wasn't the result he wanted. Let's make a deal. He spoke and looked straight at the coffin bearer. Tell me. The coffin bearer smiled as if everything was under his control. The emperor's sword and the inheritance will belong to me. The enchantment book will belong to you. Apart from that, I don't want the dragon spirit aura that the kid obtained. Even the peacock plume will belong to you. What do you think? The old man with the broken sword said. In fact, if the inheritance and the emperor's sword weren't in front of him, he would have taken Qin Hao's dragon spirit and Xiao Er's peacock plume. These 2 items were very precious. Although they were precious, they were far inferior to the inheritance and the emperor's sword. It was better to use them as bargaining chips and throw them to the coffin bearer. The prerequisite was that the coffin bearer couldn't obstruct him from fusing with the inheritance and had to protect him. No, I also want 30% of the inheritance. The coffin bearer gritted his teeth. He had already expected this outcome. He knew that the old man with the broken sword wouldn't fight him head-on. Unexpectedly, the person who made them join forces in the end was Qin Hao, the unremarkable Yuan monarch. I agree. The old man with the broken sword answered decisively. Then, he turned and walked toward the high platform. Now, I will tame the emperor's sword. You get rid of them. Then, we will fuse with the inheritance. Deal. The coffin bearer heaved a sigh of relief and was pleased with himself. Wait, you haven't asked for my permission, right? Qin Hao said. Was it so easy to be ignored because of his low cultivation level? Was he just waiting to be slaughtered? You don't have the right to say whether you agree or not. Now, do you choose to release the dragon spirit aura, or do you want me to extract it personally? The coffin bearer took a step forward. The energy around him surged, and the black coffin emitted an evil and cold aura. What if I join in? At this moment, Ning Chaofan stood beside Qin Hao. The coffin bearer was stunned. Then, he waved his hand impatiently. On account of Great Emperor Ning Wu, you can get lost as far as you can. I won't kill a good-for-nothing. I'll F***CKU. Ning Chaofan was enraged. He admitted that his talent was not as good as Qin Hao's, but that did not mean that anyone could point at his nose and call him a good-for-nothing. It seems like you have a death wish. Then die. The coffin bearer gave Ning Chaofan one last chance to leave. However, Ning Chaofan chose to fight him. In the next second, the coffin bearer blasted a frosty palm with black smoke toward Ning Chaofan. Block him. This outcome was within Qin Hao's expectations. The silver wind leopard armor turned into a ball of light and enveloped Ning Chaofan's body. To be honest, Qin Hao wanted to give the armor to K.Er. However, Ning Chaofan was in the best condition. He was the most suitable to withstand the coffin bearer's frontal attack. Therefore, he had to wear it. K.Er's mission was to cooperate with the black-clothed subordinates and wait for an opportunity to launch the fatal attack with the peacock plume. Whoosh! With the silver wind leopard armor on, Ning Chaofan felt extremely light. Like a gust of wind, he dodged the incoming frosty palm with black smoke. The equipment increased his strength greatly. Of course, the coffin bearer's own weakness also played a large part. In any case, the level 7 Yuan Venerate Ning Chaofan could be considered to be fighting the level 1 Yuan Venerate coffin bearer. As for Qin Hao, he extended his hand and placed it on the old man's shoulder, preventing him from taking the Emperor's sword. You are courting death. The old man roared furiously and turned around. An unparalleled sword intent shattered the space and turned into a huge sword that could kill martialists with sword souls. Then, it slashed toward Qin Hao's head. 23. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1229. Danger. Qin Hao was startled. He had been mentally prepared and had guessed that his opponent's swordsmanship was strong. However, the sword intent was even more ferocious than he had imagined. He definitely wouldn't be able to dodge this sword, even if he used the Aqua Wind Steps. The gap between their cultivation levels was huge and couldn't be made up for by techniques. At that moment, Qin Hao used his mind to communicate with the Sagittarius Palace's battle armor. He placed his arms above his head and shouted through gritted teeth, "Battle armor!" Whoosh! A silver-white light descended on Qin Hao's head. Amidst the holy light, the Sagittarius Palace's equipment clicked and covered Qin Hao's entire body. Helmet, breastplate, wrist guards, knee pads, combat boots, whoosh! 6 pairs of wings and 12 pairs of wings were unstoppable. Following that, a clanging fireball exploded on top of Qin Hao's head, but it was blocked by the wrist guard on his arm. Qin Hao's feet also sank deeply into the ground, and the surrounding 3 meters collapsed into a crater. It was obvious how ferocious this sword was. However, it was still blocked. It was blocked by a single piece of armor. What a strong sword intent. Qin Hao's arms were numb as he shook them vigorously. If his physical body hadn't been a demigod and he hadn't cultivated the indestructible samsara technique, his hands would have been crippled even with the protection of the Sagittarius Palace's battle armor. 5th level Monarch level. How terrifying. Huh? The old man with the broken sword was dumbfounded. He had blocked it? His sword strike was enough to kill a level 8 Yuan Venerate, yet it had been blocked by a puny Yuan Monarch like Qin Hao. He recalled what he had just said. Do you also want to try the old man's sword strike? Qin Hao replied, Yes, I'll give it a try. At that moment, the old man with the broken sword felt like he had been slapped in the face. Was he worthy? Qualified? Qin Hao had used his actions to tell him that this was his qualification. So this is your confidence. The Sagittarius Palace's battle armor. The old man with the broken sword had a trace of seriousness, but it was just a trace. Even if he relied on the Sagittarius Gong armor to block his sword, he He did not think that Qin Hao was his opponent. No, it's not just a battle suit. You've reached the venerable level. Suddenly, along with Qin Hao's rising purple flame aura, the old man with the broken sword started to panic. He remembered that Qin Hao was only a level 8 Yuan Monarch when he was comprehending on Coiling Dragon Peak. It had only been 10 days since they entered the secret realm, and Qin Hao had already broken through the bottleneck of the Monarch realm, rising 2 levels in a row. So this is also your confidence. And your aptitude is indeed not bad. With the Sagittarius Temple's armor on your body, no wonder you dare to speak so arrogantly. However, if you think that a first-level Yuan Venerate combined with a battle suit is enough to match me, then you are gravely mistaken. The old man with the broken sword took a deep breath, and his panicky expression disappeared. His expression was as calm as ever. Then he slowly raised his right hand. His right hand was like a dazzling sharp sword. Even if Qin Hao had reached the Venerate level and was equipped with the Sagittarius Temple's armor, he still wouldn't be able to use a weapon. Just his sword intent and sword aura would be enough. Just a battle suit and a first-level Yuan Venerate? Qin Hao was not as angry as he had been in the past when he saw the old man's cold disdain. On the contrary, he became even more solemn, because this battle was the biggest difference between Dandy's previous life and this life, and it could also be the most dangerous battle. If you think that my trump card is this battle suit, then please be surprised. Dragon power. With a loud roar, the dragon's soul in his body awakened and his blood boiled. Qin Hao's body became bigger and bigger in the eyes of the old man with the broken sword. He towered over 4 meters tall, his legs were like steel pillars, and his arms were like a human's waist. Whoosh! His right hand turned into a dragon claw, and his 12 wings trembled as he soared into the air. Then, he used the Mount Tai technique and punched the old man's head. 76% of the dragon power was fully unleashed. Essence Soul Realm Martialist. The old man with the broken sword exclaimed in shock. Not only was Qin Hao a Yuan Venerate, but he was also an Essence Soul Realm Martialist. Based on his mutated physique and the aura he exuded, his Essence Soul was an exceptionally strong type of Beast Soul. At the very least, Qin Hao's aura wasn't any weaker than the Sword Soul Realm Martialists. With the battle suit, he was even stronger than the Sword Soul Realm Martialist. Even so, you are still just a clown in the eyes of this old man. Disappear. No one could stop him from obtaining the inheritance. The old man with the broken sword met Qin Hao's descending fist with a massive sword light. This sword light was much stronger than the sword light condensed from the sword intent of the Sword Soul Realm Martialist. Its might was comparable to that of the Ares Temple and the Level Temple. Qin Hao was able to enjoy the treatment of a gold-ranked warrior. His life had not been in vain, and he could die without regrets. However, was the dragon power really Qin Hao's final trump card? Sorry, it was indeed a trump card. However, it was only one of his trump cards. Red Lotus Fire. The moment the fist collided with the massive sword light, a blood-red tyrannical flame that made even the demon gods tremble erupted from Qin Hao's body. He was like a cloud of fire. With the activation of his second origin soul, his aura rose once again. It instantly surpassed the Sword Soul Realm Martialists and reached the Emperor Realm. First layer, Emperor Realm. Second layer, Emperor Realm. Indestructible Samsara Technique. Buzz. The Divine Rank Cultivation Technique was activated. The Dragon Jade Technique and the Armor Refining Technique had a total of 7 different attributes. Qin Hao was once again strengthened in all aspects. At this moment, his aura had surpassed the 3rd layer Emperor Realm. It was even stronger than when he broke the Sagittarius Temple's battle armor. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion. His fist finally collided with a massive sword light. The dragon roared and the flames burned. Mixed with the will of an emperor, the massive sword light shattered into pieces. Then, the fist landed heavily on the head of the old man with the broken sword. With a bang, his entire body was smashed into the stone slabs of the church. Only one sword? Who was the one who had the face to say that? Have you sensed my presence this time? Qin Hao gazed down at the huge hole beneath his feet. Wisps of flame aura were emitted from the hole, bringing with them a burnt smell. After dragon form, Qin Hao looked down at the hole with disdain. He looked down on the person who had been smashed into the hole. You little bastard. A hoarse howl shook the heavens and the earth. His anger caused the entire church to tremble. The old man with the broken sword was like a bald goose that had lost all its feathers. With a bloody face, he flew out on his sword. The ancient sword on his back was unsheathed and stabbed towards Qin Hao's chest. You're finally using your sword. Qin Hao smiled faintly. He thought that the old man with the broken sword was very confident. He couldn't help but use his true strength so quickly. As he spoke, Qin Hao took a moment to look at Ning Chaofan's battle. Ning Chaofan was being chased around the church by the coffin-carrying man. Although each of his attacks was dangerous, each of them missed by an inch. It was unknown whether it was because his stamina couldn't keep up or because his yuan qi was not strong enough, but Ning Chaofan was always able to dodge them. You little bastard, stop and fight me to the death if you have the guts. The coffin-carrying man was like a mad bear. He held the coffin in his right hand and an earth crystal in his left palm. He was frantically absorbing the earth crystal's spirit qi. Even so, the amount of spirit qi he absorbed couldn't keep up with his consumption. Moreover, he was vomiting blood as he ran. It was a spectacular sight. It wasn't hard to guess that the injuries he had received during the battle with the Taurus Palace had been drawn out. You're nearly 4 heavens higher than me, and you want me to fight you to the death? You're out of your mind. With the help of the wind leopard armor's speed, Ning Chaofan ran faster than a rabbit. He was also delivering Qin Hao's lecture to the coffin-carrying man on his back. The coffin-carrying man of Nanming staggered and lost his balance. He almost fell to the ground. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He had always been a fierce and fearsome person, but at this moment, he couldn't even deal with a playboy who lived like a prince. 23. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1230. Translator. Nyoibo, Studio Editor. Nyoibo, Studio Dinda's Magnificence, Yuan's Spirit Skill. World Devourer. The coffin bearer took out a mouthful of blood essence and sprayed it on the black coffin. He was currently very weak and did not have enough essence energy to use a powerful soul skill. Using his blood essence was the only way, even though it would cost him a lot. The blood essence was quickly absorbed by the black coffin, and the cold air became even more intense. Wherever the cold air passed, the floor of the church cracked and turned to dust. The coffin bearer slapped open the coffin, and a violent black air current gushed out of it and enveloped Ning Chaofan like a bottomless black hole. Ning Chaofan was frozen in place, unable to move an inch. He could only watch helplessly as he was pulled into the coffin by the black cold air. What the hell is this? Ning Chaofan struggled desperately, but to no avail. As he got closer and closer to the coffin, he recalled the scene of him turning into a pile of bones and shuddered with fear. Clang! The old man with the broken sword flew out of the hole and stabbed Qin Hao in the abdomen. The shape of the sword, the power of the sword aura, the sword intent, and the sword rhythm all burst out and gathered in the sword. The movement of the sword was simple, but it could be considered a perfect swordsmanship. Puffed. Qin Hao spat out a mouthful of blood and felt a tearing sensation in his abdomen, as if he had been hit by a huge rock. His body flew far away, and his back crashed into the thick wall of the church. Crack! The wall cracked open like an octopus's web, but it did not pierce Qin Hao's silver battle armor. In an instant, both sides quieted down and stared at each other, as if preparing for an even more violent battle. The old man with the broken sword gasped for breath as his hand trembled while holding the broken ancient sword. The skin on the top of his head cracked, and all the hair on his head was gone. There was a burnt smell, anger, shock, and disbelief. All kinds of expressions alternated on his face. Dual soul martialist, he exclaimed. Beast souls and flames coexisted, and the combination of two souls had an astonishing explosive power. How could a first-stage Yuan venerate not be shocked when he had the combat power of a heavenly cycle realm martialist? It was not that he had never seen or even killed a dual-soul martialist, but this was the first time he had encountered a terrifying martialist like Qin Hao, who thrived on battle. So this was the real reason for his confidence. Not only had his cultivation risen, but he had also obtained a powerful battle suit. He had also become one of the most monstrous martial artists on the continent. He had 2 souls, and his physical strength was astonishing. I have indeed underestimated you. You are no weaker than the coffin bearer now. After taking a few deep breaths, the old man with the broken sword looked at Qin Hao seriously for the first time. His expression was solemn, and he treated Qin Hao as a qualified opponent. Did he regret it? Just a little bit. If he had joined forces with Qin Hao earlier, the power of inheritance would have been theirs without a doubt. There would have been no need for such a bitter battle. But he chose to work with the coffin bearers and ignored Qin Hao. However, there was no turning back. Even if there were, the broken sword old man would still choose the coffin-carrying man, because a character like Qin Hao was destined to not make any concessions and would definitely take all the inheritances and emperor artifacts for himself. You know fear too? Looks like you've used up a lot of energy. Qin Hao let out a low and deep laugh under his mask. If he had not lost too much energy, the sword just now would not have just barely torn apart Qin Hao's protective aura, but also his archer battle suit, and the sword would have pierced through his abdomen. Even so, there was still blood seeping out from under the battle suit. The dragon scales on Qin Hao's abdomen were shattered. This proved that even though the broken sword old man was weak, his battle strength was still above Qin Hao's. You took a hit just to test the old man's full strength? Junior, you are indeed bold and arrogant. Unfortunately, even after using the power of a third-order mid-grade Emperor Qi, you are still suppressed by the old man. A dual-soul martialist is only SOSO. The broken sword old man sneered. He was indeed unable to display his peak strength. But even if he was a fourth-order origin emperor, he could still kill Qin Hao. Dual-soul martialist. Qin Hao was stunned. He immediately raised his dragonized claw and condensed a ball of sparkling water light. The water light emitted boundless soul power. He placed his palm on his abdomen, and the blood on the battle suit quickly melted. His aura rose another level, reaching the third-order late-stage origin emperor. A triple-soul martialist. The broken sword old man's eyes almost popped out. There was actually another soul, 3 souls in one body. Although this water soul did not give Qin Hao too much power, unlike the fire soul and beast soul, it obviously had a healing effect, and the healing effect was extremely strong. The broken sword old man's face turned completely black. The opponents seemed to have endless potential and countless trump cards. I don't have much time. Time to end this. There was no killing intent in his tone, but it was colder than killing intent. In Qin Hao's eyes, the broken sword old man was definitely going to die. He flapped his wings and rushed over again with a strong gust of wind. His dragonized claw went straight for the broken sword old man's chest. He really did not have much time, and the draconic power was greatly consumed. Moreover, Qin Hao would not go back on his promise with Ning Chaofan for half a quarter of an hour. Arrogant. The broken sword old man also moved. You want to kill me with one claw? Then I'll chop off this claw. 4th level peak emperor power fused into the broken sword old man's limit. The broken sword old man emitted a 10 zhong long sword light, and the swirling yuan qi raged, slashing towards Qin Hao's dragon claw. I said it's time to end this. Boom. The dragon claw and the sword light collided, and the dragon roared. Sword qi roared, and blood splattered on Qin Hao's arm, but his body was as still as a mountain. Whoosh! A mist-like white gas separated from Qin Hao's body, and like an illusion, it passed by the broken sword old man and solidified behind him. Then, a spear shadow attacked. Pucci! Blood splattered, and it pierced the broken sword old man's shoulder. You actually dodged so quickly? Qin Hao's voice came from behind. At this moment, the broken sword old man let out a miserable scream. His arm was about to be cut off by the spear. Along with the scream, he turned around and saw Qin Hao's face, with 2 strands of white hair floating in front of his forehead. It was exactly the same as the one he met on Panlong Peak. However, this Qin Hao, that was not Qin Hao's aura, was actually that of a 3rd-level mid-stage Origin Emperor. Almost there, what a pity. Qin Hao sighed from inside the 12-wing battle suit. He did not hesitate to block the sword to let Fa Xiong attack, even if his dragon arm was heavily injured. Fa Xiong's spear skills were unquestionable, but the broken sword old man's reaction was too fast, and the spear that should have pierced his heart was stabbed into his shoulder blade instead. What is this? You actually... The broken sword old man's expression was not as simple as it was solemn, but turned into unparalleled panic. Qin Hao still had a trump card. Of course, he did not think that the monster with the spear behind him was a clone, because the monster's aura was not something a clone could have. But what was it? You talk too much. Go to hell. Fa Xiong frowned, and the broken sword old man was sent flying. With a swing, the old man's body hit the corner of the church's platform. Bang! The corner of the platform was broken, and the platform was full of cracks. Kill! Kill! The 2 Qin Hao shouted, making people's blood boil. The 2 auras exploded at the same time. Qin Hao's original body opened up all 3 souls, and the dragon soul behind him roared. His body was burning with fire, and the bottom of his feet was surrounded by water. A fierce fireball was gathering between his palms. This attack would be Qin Hao's strongest attack. Flame Dragon Jade Sky Slash. Fa Xiong had no flames on his body, and no dragon soul or water soul behind him or under his feet. He was just born not long ago, and had not even reached the small success realm. Although he could use the ability of the 3 souls, he could not control them freely. After all, actual combat was not practice, and there was no room for mistakes. Therefore, Fa Xiong only had spear intent, an extremely pure spear intent. Cloud Dragon Seed Earner. Flame Dragon Jade Sky Slash. Roar. Roar. 2 dragon roars. Qin Hao shot out a giant dragon, and the dragon's body was burning with fire. Below Fa Xiong's spear, there was a white cloud dragon. The cloud dragon flew out like an unstoppable divine spear. At this moment, the 2 dragons came out together, and Dinda's peerless talent reappeared. Chapter 12:31. See Luke Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. I am an array master. Of all the things the Ning Wu royal family could do, you chose to be that kid's follower. This is the stupidest decision you have ever made in your life. Pay the price for your stupidity. The coffin-carrying man released his soul skill as Ning Chao Fan was about to be sucked into the black coffin. Where's the powerful helper you promised? Teacher, save me. Ning Chao Fan was powerless to resist. He screamed desperately, hoping for help to appear. At that moment, 2 waves of Yuan Qi suddenly attacked from 2 different directions. They were both peak Yuan venerates and blasted the coffin-carrying man's back. Although it wasn't fatal, it caused the coffin-carrying man's body to shake violently and interrupt his soul skill. Bang! Ning Chaofan's face turned green as he was swept up by the cold black air and thrown to the ground. Young master, hang in there. Being my brother-in-law's follower isn't stupid. It's the most glorious thing in the world. K.Er and the black-robed subordinate shouted at the same time. They were the ones who had resolved Ning Chaofan's crisis. 2 crippled people, damn it. The coffin-carrying man was completely enraged. How could 2 half-crippled Yuan venerates have the guts to attack him? Now, they were being toyed with by 3 ants and hadn't even killed one of them. Ridiculous. Go to hell. Soul Martial Fusion. With a hoarse roar, the coffin-carrying man summoned his black coffin origin soul and fused it with his huge black coffin. The huge black coffin was a weapon he had comprehended on Coiling Dragon Peak. Now that the weapon and origin soul had fused, it was also known as a soul martial fusion. The power of the fusion was comparable to a beast-soul martialist's soul-martial fusion. At this moment, the coffin-carrying man's aura surged as he used his strongest trump card. He slapped his palm on his huge black coffin, and two long spear-like black gas condensed within the coffin. With a whoosh, one of them pierced towards and the other towards the subordinate in black. Danger! Ning Chaofan got up from the ground and poured his Yuan Qi into the wind leopard Kai. His speed was pushed to the limit as he ran for his life. "Young master, save me," the black-robed subordinate cried. However, Ning Chaofan was still a step. Bang! One of the black gas spears landed on the position of the man in black. The man in black was indeed not as strong as the coffin-carrying man. However, it was undeniable that he had a lot of combat experience. Seeing that he could not defend himself, he rolled for his life and hid behind a golden treasure chest in the church. Rumble! The black spear struck the golden treasure chest, causing it to explode. The pearls and gems inside flew all over the sky and turned into powder. But don't forget, the treasure chest didn't just contain treasures. Each chest also contained 1 or 2 weapons. Do you want revered weapons or emperor weapons? The black-clothed subordinate had a good life. He hid in the golden chest and hit a pitch-black shield. With a clang, the shield exploded with flames and actually blocked the spear that was flying towards him. However, the shield also hit the subordinate in black and knocked him unconscious. Before he fainted, he saw Ning Chaofan standing protectively in front of K.Er. No wonder the young master had not come to save him. So that was why, soul martial fusion. Facing this fierce attack, Ning Chaofan knew that he could not dodge anymore. He also used his final trump card. The cold iron scissors that he had comprehended on the coiling dragon peak flew out and fused with his golden scissors. After the fusion, the cold iron scissors released a dazzling golden radiance. Its aura was shocking. Go! Ning Chaofan controlled the scissors and attacked the black gas spear. Rumble! With a tremor, the 2 spears shattered at the same time. The coffin-carrying man's attack was completely blocked. However, the price that Ning Chaofan paid was not only the injury to his soul, but also the loss of the cold iron scissors. In comparison, the coffin-carrying man's attack was only blocked. His black coffin and soul were intact. Dig! Ning Chaofan spat out a mouthful of blood and fell in front of K.Er. He had lost this battle. However, when he fell, he had a smile on his face. This was because he had actually blocked the attack of a 3rd-stage Origin Emperor. What kind of glory was this? Ning Chaofan, K.Er called out. "I'm fine. Teacher, put on a top-grade defensive honorable weapon for me." Ning Chaofan replied. His body curled up on the ground, twisting in pain. "Fine? You'll be fine soon." The coffin-carrying man was so angry that he did not take Ning Chaofan seriously. In his eyes, Ning Chaofan was a good-for-nothing member of the royal family. However, this good-for-nothing had blocked the full-strength attack of his soul martial fusion. This was clearly a slap in the face. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to put Ning Chaofan into the coffin and turn him into a bloody pulp. Not even his bones would be left behind. However, when he made his move, a sharp pain spread from his limbs to his bones. It was so painful that the coffin-carrying man's face became distorted and he broke out in cold sweat. You finally couldn't hold on any longer. My teacher used up a lot of his mental strength to break the iron gate of the courtyard. You chased me for so long, but still couldn't catch up. During the battle with the Taurus Palace warriors in the 2nd stage, you must have been injured quite badly, right? Just now, you used your blood essence to activate your essence soul skill. Now, you're just an arrow at the end of its flight. Ning Chaofan wanted to laugh. An arrow at the end of its flight? Even if I'm an arrow at the end of its flight, I can still kill you like killing dogs. The coffin-carrying man took a big step forward. Buzz. The sound of the array formation rang out. An intense barrier of light suddenly enveloped the coffin-carrying man, and the barrier shrank rapidly. Array formation. How is this possible? The coffin-carrying man's expression changed. When had he been hit by the array formation? Have you forgotten that I'm also an array formation master? Miss Kayer, take this opportunity to kill him. Ning Chao Fan roared despite his heavy injuries. He could not control the tears that flowed from his eyes. Ever since he stepped onto the coiling dragon wonder, he had indeed been a good-for-nothing. However, one should not forget that he had studied array formations and artifact forging for more than 20 years. He was a genius of Golden Light City. However, his genius had been overshadowed by Qin Hao. Could it be that he had simply run away just now? You're an idiot who doesn't understand array formations. Ha ha ha. Ning Chaofan laughed heartily. When he was leading the coffin-carrying man in circles, he had already secretly drawn the array formation. Peacock plume. K. Put her arms forward and a jade-green feather appeared between her palms. As she spat out a mouthful of blood on the feather, the peacock plume burst out with surging light under the stimulation of her emperor-level demonic beast bloodline. This power caused the coffin-carrying man, a level 3 origin emperor, to scream in fear. No whoosh. The sound of an arrow piercing through the air rang out. The peacock plume was unbearable to look at as it flew towards the coffin-carrying man in the middle of the array formation. The coffin-carrying man wanted to dodge. However, his spirit was low, his physical strength was exhausted, and his essence chi was severely depleted. Even his essence blood was greatly depleted. Trapped by the array formation, he could not escape even if he had wings. Boom! The peacock plume entered the array formation, causing it to shatter. A wave of smoke rose into the sky, shaking the roof of the church. In the smoke, the coffin-carrying man's aura gradually dissipated. Success, ha, you damn thing. Ning Chaofan turned over and lay flat on the ground. He looked at the cracked roof with an incomparably proud expression. Based on today's battle, his father should not doubt him anymore. No, he's not dead yet, Kayer exclaimed. At this moment, as the smoke and dust dispersed, a badly mutilated man with a jade-green feather stuck in his chest let out an angry roar. The coffin of good fortune beside the coffin-carrying man had been split in half. At the cost of the coffin of good fortune and the origin spirit, most of the power of the peacock plume was offset. Although he did not manage to dodge in the end and was hit by the peacock plume, it was only 3 inches in his chest. This injury was nothing at all. You trash, you want to kill me? What a joke, the joke of the world. Ha ha, roar. A huge beast shadow rushed through the air and swept over the coffin-carrying man's head. With a poochy sound, the head of the coffin-carrying man was taken away by the beast shadow. The coffin-carrying man's headless body fell heavily to the ground. Chapter 1232. Roar. The dog spirit stepped on the ground and let go of the head in its mouth. It used its paws to poke at the head twice, as if to say, "Did you get my permission to laugh so wildly?" Ning Chaofan's eyes widened. He was speechless. A big dog? Furthermore, it had been dealt the finishing blow. Was this a powerful helper provided by teacher? Wasn't this a little too shameless? Shameless. K. Seemed to have expected this outcome. She walked over to the coffin-carrying man's corpse and closed her eyes to remove her peacock plume. Although the coffin-carrying man was dead, his might was still there. If Qin Hao hadn't used up a lot of his mind power and injured him in the fierce battle with the Taurus Palace, would Kayer and Ning Chaofan have been able to defeat him? Even if there were a few more people, they might not be able to kill him. The dog spirit's choice to launch a sneak attack at the last moment was very wise. Otherwise, it would have been defeated in one move. It was only a level 6 beast venerate. Even the peak Yuan venerate subordinates in black and the Essence Soul realm martialist Ning Chaofan couldn't withstand a single blow from the coffin-carrying man. At that moment, a violent commotion came from the end of the church. Everyone looked over at the same time and happened to see the 2 dragons attacking from the sky. Besides the dog spirit, Kayer and Ning Chaofan were shocked by the appearance of 2 Qin Haos. They hadn't known about the existence of Dharma characteristics before this. They had even thought that this was a clone of Qin Hao. However, this clone was impressive. The aura it exuded was actually comparable to Qin Hao's main body. Two dragon images were shot out by them, one cloud and one fire. Their domineering aura shook the world. The fire dragon advanced along the ground and went straight for the spot where the old man with the broken sword had fallen. The Jade Sky Slash's attack style was always from the bottom to the top. The Cloud Dragon Seed Earner was the opposite. It went from the top to the bottom, overturning the universe. The combination of cloud and fire was impossible to defend against. It was perfect. Even Qin Hao couldn't help but laugh. If the old man with the broken sword had been hit, even if he couldn't be killed on the spot, he would have been severely injured. At that moment, the old man with the broken sword was powerless to reverse the situation. Wong. But at this moment, a vast sword glow soared into the sky. It was filled with boundless source spirit energy, breaking through the fire dragon and cloud dragon. The two dragons had just reached the old man with the broken sword when they were destroyed by the sword glow. How could this be? Kate's beautiful eyes widened as she covered her mouth. Such a strong source spirit. Even though Ning Chao Fan was wearing the silver wind leopard armor, he still felt as if his body was being split apart by 10,000 swords. Woof, 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 the dog spirit barked restlessly. Soul Essence Martial Artist. Qin Hao and Fa Xiang said in unison. Their hearts trembled violently. As the two dragons were annihilated, the figure of the old man with the broken sword was revealed in a corner of the broken platform. His face was so gloomy that it could freeze water, and his eyes were bloodshot. Behind him, a shining sword soul floated. It turned out that he was also a soul essence cultivator. Qin Hao noticed that his sword soul wasn't perfect. Like the broken ancient sword, it was an incomplete sword soul. When the sword soul appeared, the old man's aura became stronger. Not only did he recover to the 5th level of the Martial Emperor realm, but he also broke through the 6th level of the Martial Emperor realm and reached the early 7th level of the Martial Emperor realm. This person was originally at the 5th level of the Martial Emperor realm, but the power of his source spirit only increased his cultivation by less than 2 levels. It can't even compare to the Sword Soul Essence cultivator. It looks like his sword soul was fatally injured, Qin Hao thought. At the same time, it wasn't hard to guess that this broken sword soul wouldn't be able to sustain the old man for too long. Compared to a normal soul essence cultivator, it might not even last half the time. The old man with the broken sword wouldn't use his soul essence unless it was a matter of life and death. This was because using a broken soul essence cultivator would cause him a huge backlash. Even so, this person was still sinister enough. Don't look at me as a freak. My sword soul was originally complete. However, when I was young, someone in the sect was jealous of my talent and poisoned me. I risked my life to kill the person who poisoned me. My sword soul was shattered, resulting in the current situation. My body can't grow like a normal person. I'll forever remain in my youthful state. I'll be looked down upon and despised by others. I'll be treated like an ugly monster. The old man with the broken sword clenched his fists and spoke of his past. Hiss. Ning Chao Fan and Kei didn't expect him to have such a story. It turned out that his dwarfism wasn't innate. However, no one pitied him. In the Divine Wilderness continent, there were many sects. Which generation of outstanding experts hadn't been oppressed by their peers? In the family, the sect, and even the Alchemist Guild, it was very normal for talented people to be bullied. This kind of thing happened every day. The reason why experts became experts was because they broke through their own adversity and were reborn in a hopeless situation. Take Qin Hao, for example. If he hadn't defeated Zhuang Heba back then, if he hadn't opened a path for himself under the pressure of Qin Yuhai and his son, he would have died. No one would sympathize with the weak. And when you rose, you would also have the right to trample on others. Who are you telling all this nonsense to? Qin Hao said coldly. His body trembled slightly. The dragon's force was about to dissipate. It was very dangerous for the old man with a broken sword to dissipate when he was at his strongest. I killed the person who poisoned me. Later on, his entire family, his master, the entire sect's elders and sect master, Everyone who mocked me and didn't uphold justice for me were all killed. I remember that the daughter of an elder admired me greatly at the beginning. She called me brother every day and was very affectionate. When my sword soul was shattered, she saw me as trash. I humiliated her in front of her father. I'm only saying this to tell you one thing. Those who stop me will be killed without mercy. Wong. The old man with the broken sword roared. The broken sword soul behind him shone brightly. His body was like a sharp blade that flew horizontally, turning into a hurricane that rushed towards Fa Xiong. Don't come over. Fa Xiong roared angrily at Qin Hao. He opened his arms and his body expanded. A layer of dense dragon scales covered his body. He had activated the dragon's force. Of course, activating the dragon's force didn't increase his cultivation level because Qin Hao was at the late third layer of the Monarch realm. This was his current limit. Fa Xiong couldn't surpass his limit. At most, they would be equal. If his divine ability reached small success, large success, or even perfection, it would be different. At that time, Fa Xiong would not only surpass Qin Hao, but would even leave Qin Hao in the dust. However, he had just been born and couldn't use his soul power to increase his strength. Although he couldn't increase his cultivation level, he still had the additional effects of his source spirit. For example, the dragon scales had a strong defensive ability. Wong. Fa Xiong was more than 4 meters tall, and his body was covered in shining scales. He was about the same size as Qin Hao in his 12-wing battlesuit. He held the sky extinguishing spear tightly in his dragon claws and slashed at the old man with the broken sword. Pung! There was an explosion. The golden spear shadow was jolted into the air. A huge sword light pierced through Fa Xiong's body and came out his back. The sturdy dragon scales didn't have any effect. Fa Xiong lost. Brother-in-law, looking at Fa Xiong's body that had been pierced through by the huge sword, cried out. She didn't know that it was Fa Xiong. She only knew that it was her brother-in-law. No one is allowed to take half a step forward. I'm fine. Qin Hao's roar came out of the 12-wing battlesuit. It rumbled like thunder. At this moment, Qin Hao felt like his heart was about to split open. He wasn't injured at all. It was only Fa Xiong that was injured. However, he knew very well that Fa Xiong had stopped him to use the dragon's force to test the power of the sword. If the old man with the broken sword killed Fa Xiong, he could also kill Qin Hao, even if Qin Hao was protected by the battlesuit. Chapter 1233. Level 7 Origin Emperor. Using Soul Martial Fusion. Dragon Scale Defense is ineffective. Fa Xiong lowered his head, showing no signs of pain. He looked at the sword that had pierced through his body and spoke to Qin Hao as if he was returning the favor. The sword was as wide as a palm and engraved with inscriptions. It was not the old man's broken sword, but the fire elemental emperor weapon that he had comprehended at the divine soldier platform. It was no wonder that the sovereign sword was so sharp and could pierce through the dragon scales so easily. You monster that is not a doppelganger. How dare you injure my arm? Disappear. The old man's eyes were like snakes and scorpions. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. The sovereign sword burst into raging flames as he activated the flame inscriptions and burned Fa Xiong's body. Fa Xiong's body quickly degenerated as he was burned. His legs slowly melted. However, he did not feel pain, nor did he bleed. He even had a faint smile on his face. He was just a Dharma idol. He was not human. Enough. Come back, Qin Hao said. Although he was just a Dharma idol and a replica, he could not allow the old man to abuse him like this. Suppose the person who blocked the attack was not a Dharma idol. Instead, it was Guadi, Shui Han, the old demon, or Xiao Han. Qin Hao felt terrible. Haha, are you heartbroken? I'm just a Dharma idol. I won't die. At most, I won't be able to transform for a while, Fa Xiong said, ignoring the flames that were burning him. He gave Qin Hao a look and then looked at the ugly dwarf with a vicious expression. His brows furrowed, and he transmitted his voice to Qin Hao. With your current strength, even your armor won't be able to block a single strike from him. Retreating is your only choice. However, I still want to try one last move. Last move? Qin Hao was stunned. He was about to order and Ning Chao Fan to escape. Yes, our last move. I don't know if it will succeed. Dharma fusion, shouted the Dharma idol. The old man with the broken sword looked on in shock as the Dharma idol flew out like an ethereal soul. It landed on Qin Hao's body and merged with Qin Hao. Dharma fusion was the final move of the Dharma fusion technique. This move wasn't recorded in the ancient books, so Qin Hao didn't know about it. The dragon spirit manifestation had this kind of consciousness. It was a very shallow consciousness, as if it was born with it. When he suddenly had this thought, he really wanted to give it a try. He didn't know if he could succeed. Wong. The two Qin Haos overlapped each other, and a surge of energy burst out, transforming into a whirlwind that swept out, causing the walls of the church to crack open. In the distance, and Ning Chao Fan couldn't stand steadily and couldn't control their own bodies. They bumped into each other in the church like straw, and huge treasure chests flew out one after another. It was a very lively scene. Rumble. In the midst of the raging whirlwind, the roof of the church was completely broken, and the walls on all sides completely collapsed. Even the two 20-meter-tall star steel array doors were blown away by the impact. When the whirlwind stopped, Qin Hao was the only one left on the battlefield. His battlesuit's visor had already been opened, and he stared coldly at the old man with the broken sword. Then, a silver battle bow appeared in his hand. Qin Hao took out a silver arrow from his back and knocked it on the bowstring. He was very quiet, and his aura was still that of a late-stage, third-layer monarch. The fusion of the Dharma powers didn't bring him more power, nor did it increase his cultivation level. However, this suffocating silence made the old man with the broken sword extremely solemn. He could already feel the threat of death from Qin Hao. Sky-breaking sword. The old man with the broken sword raised the sovereign sword in his hand, and the sword light soared into the sky. The sword was once again wrapped in flames, and two fire dragons crazily coiled around the huge sword light, letting out shocking dragon roars. Setting sun mantra. Qin Hao used the most famous heaven-tier martial technique in his previous life, which had once caused the continent to panic and made many 9-star great emperors tremble. This was his all-out attack. Dragon Spirit. Roar. A dragon spirit coiled around the silver arrow. Red Lotus Fire. Boom. The arrowhead gave birth to a blood-red flame, displaying its might. Tranquil Water. Whoosh. At the end of the arrow, a sparkling water light swayed like a tail. Die. The old man with the broken sword roared. He held the sword with both hands, and a sword light burst out. The burning flames on it surged even more fiercely, and the two fire dragons roared even more violently. This sword fell straight down, slashing toward Qin Hao. Ancient and mysterious, the pill shakes the world. My will, one arrow disdains everything. Whoosh! Qin Hao's fingers loosened, and the silver arrow that was infused with the setting sun mantra pierced through the air. With the support of the Sagittarius Palace battle armor, it was as if it had grown 12 wings, and its speed was unbelievably fast, bringing with it a vast rainbow light. Crack! The arrow and the sword light collided. In the first attack, the Red Lotus Fire instantly extinguished the mixed flames on the sword light. In the second attack, the Dragon Spirit fought the two fire dragons alone, and its domineering aura tore them apart. In the third attack, the endless power of the tranquil water drove the arrow. Not only did the arrow's speed not decrease, it flew even more ferociously, like a rock flying out of its cage, flapping its wings and soaring into the sky. It completely shattered the sword light until it flew in front of the old man with the broken sword. Bam! The inscription Sovereign Sword was shattered by the arrow, and the arm of the old man with the broken sword that was holding the sword was thrown into the air along with a fountain of blood. He won, Kair exclaimed. Teacher is mighty, too awesome. Ning Chao Fan had never seen such a shocking arrow. It crossed 1.5 cycles, broke the opponent's sword, and crippled the opponent's arm. It was as if a god had descended and it was unstoppable. However, what K.Er and Ning Chao Fan did not expect was that after this arrow, Qin Hao fell straight to the ground. His 4-meter-tall body shrank back to its original size, and the 12-winged battle suit disappeared. Underneath his body, he vomited a large amount of blood that was shocking to the eye. The old man with the broken sword had his sword destroyed and his arm broken, but he was still standing tall. The one who had lost was Qin Hao. If the one who flew over was Qi Hong, you would have died. Qin Hao looked at the old man's short body. In his previous life, Dinah had never fallen in front of an enemy. Even though he had been trapped in the 9 heavens god's punishment array, he had still remained unyielding and proud. In these 2 lives, no one had truly defeated Qin Hao. This was the first time he had fallen at the feet of an enemy. Qin Hao had been defeated for the first time. You are the number 1 genius in thousands of years. No, in all of history. The old man with the broken sword ignored his bleeding arm. Losing an arm was no longer important. Even the inheritance of the great empress and the emperor's sword couldn't move him. Right now, he only had eyes for Qin Hao. This was a young man who had challenged a level 7 origin monarch with the power of a level 1 Yuan venerate, 3 souls in 1 body, and countless trump cards. Yes, he had been defeated. However, who would dare say that he wasn't strong? Who would dare mock him? A loser had always been a symbol of humiliation. However, the word humiliation simply couldn't be applied to Qin Hao. What he displayed was madness, ferocity, fierceness, and godliness. It was a miracle for a level 1 Yuan venerate to challenge an origin monarch. Shattering the old man's sword and crippling his arm could no longer be described as a miracle. It was terrifying. If this place was filled with geniuses from the southern region, who below the monarch grade would be able to withstand a blow from Qin Hao. Furthermore, just as Qin Hao had said, if the arrow had been Qi Hong, the old man with the broken sword would have died. This battle couldn't be considered a loss. Unfortunately, the last person standing is still the old man. So what if he is the number 1 genius in all of history? He can't stop the old man's path. Let's end this. After the old man with the broken sword finished speaking, a majestic sword intent condensed into a huge sword shadow behind him. The sword shadow was activated and whizzed towards Qin Hao. Brother-in-law, teacher, woof, woof, woof. 3 figures rushed over at the same time. Qin Hao looked at the 3 figures and smiled warmly. That's right, he had lost. But so what? Defeat didn't mean that he had to die. If I had known this would happen, I would have given up on the Ling Tianyu. When did I become so stingy? Qin Hao shook his head and threw a piece of white jade at the old man with a broken sword. This piece of jade had been infused with spirit energy by Emperor Gu in the Star Refining Building. Because he couldn't bear to part with it, he hadn't taken it out. Now he was giving it to the old man with a broken sword. Boom! The Ling Tianyu flew out, and the might of a peak level 7 origin monarch exploded. The sword light flying over was like a fragile baby that was engulfed by the raging power of the Ling Tianyu. Then, it turned into a storm that engulfed the old man with a broken sword. No, I can't accept this. I can't accept this. This cry was heart-wrenching. Boom! A mushroom cloud rose, and the old man with the broken sword completely disappeared from this world. Chapter 1234. Qian Qian. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Master and Disciple. K.Er and Ning Chao Fan squatted on the ground as if they had been drained of all energy. They stared blankly at the terrifying vitality storm. Qin Hao still had a trump card that could easily kill the old man with a broken sword. Ning Chao Fan had a strange look in his eyes. He could not understand why Qin Hao did not use it earlier and insisted on fighting a bitter battle. If it were him, he would not have risked his life to fight the old man with a broken sword. Perhaps this is the difference between me and Master. Ning Chao Fan shook his head in self-mockery. The disciples of the royal family and the core disciples of large sect held themselves in high regard. Fighting and killing was something for the servants and servants to do. They basically would not interfere. If they were at a disadvantage, they only needed to bring out their family and sect and compete for power. How many people would fight for themselves at all costs? However, from today onwards, Ning Xiaofan decided that he would not bring his family and subordinates with him when he went out in the future. Who plotted against me? Suddenly, a roar rang out from the storm. The terrifying storm collapsed and dissipated in the midst of the roar. Then, a figure appeared. Not only Ning Xiaofan and but even Qin Hao was shocked. Was he not dead? The figure slowly turned around. The hearts of the three were in their throats. However, when they saw the person's face, they all heaved a sigh of relief. This person's face was very pale, so pale that he looked like a corpse. His eye sockets were deeply sunken. He held a paper fan in his hand and gently waved it. The word modest was written on the fan. It was the modest prince, Li Wanji. Li Wanji could feel that Qin Hao's life was in danger. Coincidentally, he had finished what he was supposed to do. He tore through space and arrived instantly, but he was caught in Gu Huang's vitality explosion. However, this energy was nothing in front of Li Wanji. With a roar, it dissipated. At this moment, he swept his gaze across and saw the headless corpse of the coffin bearer, the broken black coffin, and Qin Hao and the rest lying on the ground after the battle. Amazing! Li Wanji smiled faintly and gave Qin Hao a thumbs up. What he meant by impressive was not only because the coffin bearer had been killed, but also because he had sensed the aura of the old man with the broken swords. Killing the translation for Qin Hao's translation. It was for the old man with the broken sword word. Unlike Li, translation Li was Li, and was he after the battle? Was he for the S? Was he? He translation underscore translation. Comma. Translation, but the translations. Translation. S is red to the translation red, translation. S of the... That was. What's supposed to come has finally come. Qin Hao muttered to himself. He did not stop the other party, as he had expected this. In fact, Qin Hao did not have the ability to stop him. Unexpectedly, Li Wanji did not take the inheritance directly. Instead, he stood below the stage and slowly knelt on the ground. He kowtowed 9 times in a row, looking very solemn. Master's ceremony. Ning Xiaofan exclaimed in surprise. He and Qin Hao looked at each other. This was the most respectful ceremony of 9 kowtows in the continent. Moreover, Li Wanji's actions were a bit like that of a member of the royal family. Could it be that his enchantment skills were taught by the corpse? Then who was Li Wanji? Was he the spirit emperor, or a member of the royal family of one of the 3 empires in the southern region, or a prince of a fallen kingdom? Qin Hao and Ning Xiaofan did not speak. They just watched quietly. After Li Wanji kowtowed 9 times, he stood in place and stared at the corpse for a long time. His expression was very complicated, but the most obvious one was gratitude. Then, he took the inheritance and the enchantment book. This despicable person, it was very angry. Logically speaking, the inheritance, book, and emperor's sword all belonged to Qin Hao. His brother-in-law had fought a bloody battle to protect them. However, Li Wanji was unfathomable. Strength was everything. How could he snatch them from him? How could he snatch them? I know that you are very unhappy. It was indeed me who persuaded you to open the hidden dragon mystery realm. It was also me who persuaded you to open the door to the divine temple. However, I had no choice. Perhaps there's no point in saying all this now. No matter what, I won't give you the inheritance and the Tao scripture. You know very well that I'm the only person most suitable for them in this world. Only with me can the inheritance and the Tao scripture shine. Li Wanji spoke. Qin Hao did not deny it. That was indeed the case. The emperor-level inheritance was broad and profound. The enchantment path was mysterious and unpredictable. Without a few hundred years of cultivation, one would not be able to cultivate it well. It was not suitable for Xiao Han and Kei. However, I will not let you do it for nothing. Without your protection, the inheritance would have been absorbed by the dwarf with the broken sword, Li Wanji said. He raised his hand, and the floating emperor's sword flew into his palm. The powerful ninth forged emperor's sword did not resist at all. It was as if it belonged to Li Wanji. However, Li Wanji wiped the sword with his palm. The hidden sharpness of the sword dissipated as if it had turned into an ordinary weapon. He threw it to Qin Hao and said, "This sword is not bad. It is very suitable for your girlfriend. I believe that in her hands, this sword will regain its former glory. How can I accept this? Actually, it should belong to you." Qin Hao smiled honestly. However, he was not slow. He kept the sword in his spatial ring. This caused Ning Chaofan to roll his eyes. In fact, everyone could see that Empress Xiantian was Li Wanji's master. The master's things naturally belonged to the disciple. Li Wanji gave this gift to Qin Hao because he wanted to thank him. However, he was right. This emperor's sword was indeed suitable for Xiao Han. Otherwise, the scabbard of the emperor's sword would definitely not recognize Xiao Han as its master. At this moment, Qin Hao recalled the ancient scabbard that Xiao Han had comprehended on the divine soldier platform. That was clearly the scabbard of the emperor's sword. It's a pity that I led my disciple and my aunt into a bloody battle. We were surrounded by hundreds of people and were almost killed. After paying such a huge price, we still could not protect all of your master's treasures. They were shamelessly snatched away by other martial artists. I am very ashamed. Sigh. Qin Hao shook his head guiltily. He was referring to the golden treasure chests in the church. The martial artists had already left. Almost 90% of the tens of thousands of chests had been taken away. No one dared to take the hundreds of chests near the platform. This was because Qin Hao was fighting a bloody battle with the elder with the broken sword. Who would dare to come? Leave? Do you think you can leave? Li Wanji's voice suddenly turned cold. His vast consciousness flew out and soared into the sky. It merged with the entire hidden dragon mystery realm. It was as if he was the sky and the earth at this moment. He was the master of the hidden dragon mystery realm, and he was in charge of all life and death in this place. Then, Qin Hao was shocked to see streaks of light flying over from all directions. These streaks of light all gathered in Li Wanji's palm. Li Wanji opened his palm and said, revealing a pile of shiny spatial rings. Hiss! Ning Chaofan sucked in a breath of cold air. He had collected all of the martial artist's spatial rings with just a single thought. This was a god. No wonder you didn't want to show yourself before. I see, Qin Hao said. Only he and Li Wanji understood this kind of power. The hidden dragon mystery realm had already become Li Wanji's consciousness world. He had completely taken over it. As long as he was here, Li Wanji was a living god. Unless he died, or if his cultivation level was higher than his, no one could break the rules of the mystery realm. Chapter 1235. He hadn't shown himself previously because Li Wanji was refining the hidden dragon mystic realm. Otherwise, how could the broken sword old man be so arrogant? How are you going to deal with a martialist who sneaked into the mystic realm? Qin Hao asked. Li Wanji couldn't possibly wipe them out with a thought, right? Li Wanji glanced at Qin Hao and said, I don't have the time to do that. I kicked them all out. Kill them? A bunch of Yuan venerates. Was it worth it to kill them? If Qin Hao had regained his former glory, he wouldn't have bothered to kill them either. Kick them all out. Ning Chaofan's heart skipped a beat as he observed a moment of silence for the martialists. How ruthless! The mystic realm was filled with death. So many people had died to enter the divine temple and leave with a few chests. In the end, Li Wanji had recovered the chests and chased them out of the mystic realm one by one. The martialists had come for nothing and returned empty-handed. Who could they complain to? Ning Chaofan couldn't help but stare deeply at Qin Hao. If he hadn't been close to his teacher, he might have ended up like the other martialists and had his spatial ring taken away and kicked out by Li Wanji. Therefore, with a smile on his face, he respectfully went forward to hold Qin Hao's arm and said, "Teacher, you've worked hard. While fighting against hundreds of people, this disciple wasn't of much help and even held you back. I believe that Senior Li will definitely not treat teacher unfairly." Since Li Wanji might be the spirit emperor, Ning Chaofan wouldn't dare call him by his name. Qin Hao's eyes lit up. Ning Chaofan was worthy of being a member of the imperial family. His eyesight was quite good. With a righteous expression, he said, "It's fine. It's just some physical pain. It's not worth mentioning. As a person, we must be honest. Since it belongs to Brother Li, we should help protect it." Li Wanji listened to the master-disciple duo singing the same tune and talking about bloody battles and being besieged by hundreds of people. As a person, one had to be kind. Wasn't he being kind? Did they think he was blind? How could he not know how many martialists had entered the mystic realm? You just want to get more benefits. Hypocrites. Li Wanji clenched his right hand and swung it. Streaks of light flew out from the space rings in his hand. It was as if golden figures had descended on the ground, including the space rings of the old man with the broken sword and the coffin bearers. Golden lights flew out from all of them and gathered in front of Qin Hao. There were a total of 10 of them. They were the armors of the 12 palaces. The 12 palaces' battle suits are Master Xin Tian's blood, sweat, and tears. I don't need to say more about their power. You know it yourself. Including the Sagittarius Palace battle armor and the Lion Palace battle armor. They're all here for you. As for how to deal with it, you can give it to your friends or your elders. You can squander it however you want. It's high-end, generous, and classy. It's perfect to put it on the table during festivals. You should be satisfied, right? Li Wanji really wanted to beat Qin Hao up. Originally, he had intended to keep a few sets to study his teacher's enchantment techniques. If he didn't take them out now, he would become an unkind person. Don't you think it's infuriating? Fortunately, with his teacher's inheritance, it shouldn't be a problem to make these golden battle suits. Brother Li is too polite. I'm only helping you to promote righteousness and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. There's no suspicion of extortion. However, since you've already given it to me, I can only accept it. Otherwise, wouldn't it make you lose face? Qin Hao's words were resistant, but his hands were very fast. With a wave of his hand, the 10 battle suits in front of him were all put into his spatial ring. Ning Chaofan didn't even have the chance to touch them. To be honest, the inheritance didn't matter, and the Emperor's sword wasn't rare. Qin Hao didn't have the energy to learn enchantment techniques. He was Dende, and he was busy enough with alchemy. But these 12 palaces' battle suits were good. He had already intended to give Guadi, Shui Han, and the old demon a set each. The Aquarius Palace was naturally made for Shui Han. The Virgo Palace suited Wan Qin. Whether it was the Taurus Palace battle suit's shape or material, it was much better than the other battle suits. Even its source spirit was compatible with Guadi. Thinking of the scene of Tsaoguo wearing it, Qin Hao couldn't help being excited. It would be incomparably spectacular. Attacking a city, who could stop it? Master, leave me a set. Ning Chaofan was about to cry. He felt that the Cancer Temple battle suit was not bad. The 2 pincers were very strong, similar to the scissors' source spirit. It was very suitable for him. But whether it was suitable or not, Qin Hao had the final say. He patted Ning Chaofan's shoulder. Just now you said it yourself. You didn't help me at all, and you're not embarrassed to ask for it? Let's see how you perform in the future. Pucci. K.Er couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing. Master, I'll be filial to you. Ning Chaofan's attitude was sincere, but his heart was unsatisfied, damn shameless. I helped you block the coffin-carrying man, but I was almost sucked into the coffin and lost my life. What about my other friends? Can you tell me where they are now? Qin Hao didn't have time to care about young Master Ning. He walked in front of Li Wanji with an incomparably dignified expression. Xiao Han, the old demon, and the 2 brothers Huang and Ah He were still missing. Li Wanji should give him an explanation. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't help you. Li Wanji said. What do you mean? Qin Hao's eyes were like sharp swords as he looked at him. His expression suddenly changed, and he was filled with anger. Master, don't be impulsive. Ning Xiaofan saw this and felt that something was wrong. Scram! Qin Hao coldly spat out this word. Ning Xiaofan was so scared that he didn't dare move forward. He looked at Li Wanji again and said, "I'm asking you, what do you mean?" Li Wanji was the one who instigated the opening of the secret territory. The number of people who entered would remain the same before they left. Qin Hao had no room for negotiation. "Calm down. I'm afraid you're no match for me now." When the secret territory opened, the space was not stable. Your girlfriend and other subordinates must have been ejected. There is no aura of them in the secret territory. They're all outside. Li Wanji's eyes were unusually serious because Qin Hao's eyes were like swords. "Brother-in-law, let's go." Kay stepped forward and tugged at Qin Hao's clothes. Since his sister was not in the secret territory, it was urgent to find Xiao Han. Emperor Zhao's only beloved daughter was missing. Once the news spread to the northern borderline, the consequences would be very serious. Even Qin Hao couldn't bear it. "Don't worry." Qin Hao patted Kay's hand and took a deep breath. Based on Xiao Han's strength, it wouldn't be easy for others to take her down unless they encountered an emperor-level almighty. As for Old Demon, Ahei, and Huang, the three big men, Qin Hao wasn't worried at all. He wouldn't take them even if they were thrown on the streets. "Let me ask you a question. Are you the Spirit Emperor?" Qin Hao asked. Ning Xiaofan and Kay also wanted to know the answer to this question. "Take a guess." Li Wanji chuckled. "The Spirit Emperor?" "Sort of. However, he had many other identities. His figure was everywhere in the southern region. The mere title of the Spirit Emperor was not enough to show Li Wanji's ability. "Help me. I want to merge a stone into a weapon. In this world, only you can do it." Qin Hao could tell from Li Wanji's eyes that he was the Spirit Emperor. However, this person was very shrewd. He probably had more than just the Spirit Emperor. "Oh, let me take a look." Li Wanji stretched out his hand. The stone that Qin Hao mentioned was definitely not an ordinary stone. He wanted to see it for himself. Qin Hao used his mind to take out the damaged Great Void Sword and Ling Tian Jade. He handed them to Li Wanji. "Good sword." Li Wanji's eyes suddenly lit up. He could tell at a glance that the Great Void Sword was extraordinary. "It's a pity that this sword contains your willpower. I can't repair it." "Yes, I don't need you to repair it. Take a look at this stone first." Qin Hao handed the Ling Tian Jade to him. Li Wanji couldn't repair the Great Void Sword, but it didn't mean that he didn't have the ability. Before he could repair it, he had to erase Qin Hao's willpower from the sword. Obviously, Qin Hao wouldn't agree. 23. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1236. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Hidden Dragon. This piece of Ling Tian Jade was only half the size of a fist, but it was all that Qin Hao had. He still felt that it was a pity that he had to use a small piece to kill the elder with a broken sword. Li Wanji picked up the stone and tossed it around. His palm flashed with platinum light as he released his emperor-level power into the Ling Tian Jade. His expression gradually changed to one of surprise. "What a strange jade stone. You want to merge it into the sword to store your opponent's vital chi and then use it to kill your opponent?" He looked at Qin Hao. Qin Hao's eyes were filled with admiration as he praised. "Smart people are indeed straightforward. Brilliant. Even 100 Gu Huangshu couldn't compare to such a sharp eye." Qin Hao didn't even need to explain his intentions. He was indeed the Spirit Emperor. "Let me see your sword again." Li Wanji was very interested. "My sword is also very special. Take it easy, it can hurt people." Qin Hao let go of his hand, and the Great Void Sword floated in front of Li Wanji. Its level was low, but it was still a divine weapon. When it was forged into its second form, Qin Hao's Emperor-level power was integrated into it. It wasn't as easy as Li Wanji subduing Empress Xuantian's sword. After all, Empress Xuantian's sword wouldn't resist Li Wanji. Li Wanji nodded and looked serious. He stretched out his index finger and touched the sword. He slowly slid it on the sword. Below his index finger, platinum vital chi spread out and enveloped the entire Great Void Sword. At this moment, the Great Void Sword let out a roar as if it was angry. It was very strong. The sword roar was like a sharp thorn that nailed into Ning Chaofan and Keir's ears. They couldn't bear it and quickly covered their ears with their hands. Li Wanji felt it the most. When his emperor-level will came with his vital chi and tried to penetrate the great void sword, he felt 3 surging wills coming from the sword. The first was like the pressure of a god that couldn't be stopped. The second was too strong. It seemed to come from hell and turned into a ferocious demon king. Li Wanji quickly withdrew his finger and took 2 steps back. As for the third, it was also very strong. However, it was still not enough to pose too much of a threat to Li Wanji. There was still a huge gap between it and the previous 2 wills. Li Wanji knew that this third will belong to Qin Hao himself. It was also an emperor will. However, the first part was too frightening. It was not the power of the mortal world at all. Li Wanji had the illusion that his spirit was being crushed. What a shocking sormite. Could this be a... Li Wanji did not continue speaking. Qin Hao looked at him with a half-smile. If he still could not guess the level of this sword, he would not be the spirit monarch. A strong sense of possessiveness flashed through his eyes, and his heart became restless. However, he quickly suppressed his desire and took a deep breath. Although he was not a good person, he was indebted to Qin Hao. Li Wanji was very principled in doing things. I can, he said. Hearing this, Qin Hao couldn't help but be overjoyed. However, the process of merging the two is not that simple. It requires the assistance of an external object. Otherwise, if it is forcefully merged, it will break the balance of the sword and damage its original grade. Li Wanji added. Qin Hao was stunned and nodded. Even someone as powerful as the spirit monarch, the only enchantment master in the southern region, would not be able to do it so easily. Thinking about it, it made sense. Otherwise, the great void sword would not be a divine artifact. What external object do you need? Qin Hao asked. The external object was probably not simple. I have to see its initial form first. If I'm not wrong, this sword is the second form that you forged. Li Wanji was very shrewd. Buzz. The indestructible samsara technique was activated. Qin Hao swept a force toward the great void sword. After this force entered, the great void sword shook and emitted a dazzling purple-gold light. The sword shrank and turned into a pocket-sized cauldron. However, after it turned into a cauldron, the demonic aura it emitted became even stronger. Li Wanji's expression changed drastically. He immediately closed his eyes and said, Enough. Put it away. Qin Hao smiled faintly. He waved his sleeve and put the great void cauldron into his spatial ring. How is it? Are you confident? Of course. Li Wanji opened his eyes and was unusually confident. Only by seeing its initial form can I analyze which external force is the most suitable. Amazing. Then what do you need? Qin Hao asked. Naturally, he could not trouble Li Wanji to look for external objects. However, as long as Li Wanji said it, Qin Hao believed that he could do it. Don't be too serious. This object is not precious, but it is extremely rare in the southern region. I know that this object can only be found in the southern part of the martial Ning Empire, in the ruins of Nanlu in the Huaishi County of the Great Ding Duchy. It is called the sword leaf. Li Wandao smiled faintly. The sword leaf was shaped like a sword, but it was not a leaf. It was a plant that looked like a leaf. The sword leaf was very tough and unusually tough. It was known as the metal and stone of plants. It liked to live in an extremely cold environment with dry soil. Such an environment was rare in the southern region. If it was in the barren western Liang, the sword leaf could be seen everywhere. Li Wanji knew that the lowest-ranked families in western Liang would often plant their own sword leaves because many families could not afford to buy swords. The sword leaf was very tough and could be used as a sword. The longer the sword leaf was, the better it could be compared to a lethal weapon. It's actually a sword leaf. Qin Hao was alarmed. He thought that it was a high-grade external object. He was prepared to spend billions of crystal stones to spread the bounty. It seemed that Li Wanji had helped him save these billions of crystal stones. As for the ruins of Nanlu, wasn't it the place he wanted to go? I will first enchant you. When I find a sword leaf and split it open, I will place your sword inside. Then I will inject my enchanted spirit chi and let the sword and spirit chi grow together with the sword leaf. Finally, I will tie the sword leaf with a rope to prevent the spirit chi from dissipating. Remember, choose the oldest and hardest sword leaf. Fuse it for 49 days and open it. When that time comes, you'll get everything you want. Li Wanji was very agile. As he spoke, he crushed the Lingtian jade into powder. Following that, waves of mysterious energy stirred the powder of the Lingtian jade with his vital chi. They circled around his fingertips, and he started to draw in front of Qin Hao. He drew a total of 999 waves of spirit chi. They weaved around each other like dragons. It was very beautiful and spectacular. Ning Chaofan and Kei were dumbfounded. Li Wanji drew very quickly, but he was very serious. He could not afford to make any mistakes. After all, the waves of spirit chi contained too many mantras, weapon refinement, inscriptions, array formations, and even array formations to counteract the negative effects of divine weapons. It was very exhausting. After he finished, even though he was a spirit monarch, he still felt exhausted. Amazing! Qin Hao was dazzled. Li Wanji's movements were too fast. This speed, this huge amount of work. All techniques return to one. Gather. Li Wanji shouted. The 99 waves of spirit chi merged into one and entered Qin Hao's space ring. He staggered and sweat poured down his face. Thank you for your hard work. Qin Hao said, this is what you deserve. If you have any other requests, just let me know. I will try my best to help you. If you want to go to the ruins of Namlu, I can send you there now. You can get the sword leaf in 10 breaths. Li Wanji took out an elixir and swallowed it. His pale face seemed to have recovered a little. However, he was frighteningly pale. Nothing could be seen. Qin Hao watched Li Wanji swallow a platinum elixir and blinked. A 9th grade imperial elixir. He was very generous. However, he shook his head. I won't trouble you. Brotherly, you are exhausted. I can't bear to see you. Don't give me that. Just tell me if you want to find your girlfriend. How could Li Wanji not see through him? Qin Hao gave up on going to the ruins of Nanlu because he wanted to find his girlfriend first. Please remember the domain name of this book. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1237. Qian Qian. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Golden Lights City Auction. If you want to find a girlfriend, go find one. Why are you saying that you can't bear to work yourself? Shameless. You saw through me. How embarrassing. Qin Hao shook his head and walked toward the 2 stellar steel array doors. The 2 array doors were originally reinforced by an Emperor-grade array. Now that the church was destroyed, the array disappeared. Qin Hao waved his sleeves and put it into his spatial ring. He turned around and said, my sword is damaged. I'll take the stellar steel to repair it. Brotherly, you don't have any objections, right? Ning Chaofan, let's go. Yes, master. Ning Chaofan carried the black-clothed subordinate with a broken arm and stood beside Qin Hao with Li Wanji didn't say much. He waved his arm, and Dilly tore open the space of the secret realm. Qin Hao and the others were wrapped in a cloud of platinum energy and flew toward the spatial crack. Brotherly, will we meet again? Why don't you follow me? Ha! Qin Hao's laughter came from the spatial crack in the sky. Get lost. Li Wanji stomped his foot. Bang! The spatial crack closed. Follow the Spirit Emperor? You must be dreaming. Do I need to follow you? Li Wanji was so angry that his teeth itched. Those 2-star steel array doors should be the last refining materials left behind by Master Xiantian. To take them away like bandits, how hateful. After sending off Qin Hao and the others, Li Wanji returned to the high platform. He stared at the red-clothed corpse. A faint murderous aura grew stronger in his eyes. Her bones were damaged in many places, and her limbs were broken. According to the analysis of the bone wounds, her internal organs were forcibly shattered. Empress Xiantian did not die of exhaustion. The real cause of her death was that she was killed by a superior. What kind of disaster happened inside the South Pole Divine Palace that made Master Xiantian, the master of the seventh peak, escape from death and die here. Li Wanji clenched his fists tighter and tighter as he fell in a deep thought. He had never been to the South Pole Divine Palace. Neither was he a disciple of Empress Xiantian. This was the first time the two of them had met. Yet their first meeting was actually like this, separated by yin and yang. In his early years, he was rebellious and left his family in a fit of pique. By chance, he came across the enchantment scroll left by Empress Xiantian and learned his skills. Later on, following the clues, he found this place. At that time, Li Wanji's cultivation was still poor, so he couldn't open the door of the temple. He couldn't even break through the 12 zodiac temples, so he used the ability to move mountains to create the coiling dragon wonder. He used the coiling dragon formation to absorb the spiritual energy of this place. This would drain the 12 palaces' origins and weaken their combat strength. Secondly, it could hide the hidden dragon mystery realm from others. At that time, Li Wanji's enchantment was not perfect. Due to a free combination of factors, the entrance to the secret realm was sealed, and he could not find it. Although it was the first time they met, in Li Wanji's heart, Empress Xiantian was the teacher who had influenced his life and changed his fate. She was his family. According to the remnant consciousness left by his teacher, Li Wanji knew that Empress Xiantian was an elder of the South Pole Palace. She was an outstanding elder of the fourth generation and was in charge of the resources of the seventh peaks. She was responsible for teaching the disciples how to forge weapons and formations. However, his teacher's most powerful skill was her unique enchantment technique. That was all Li Wanji knew. As for why Empress Xiantian was severely injured, why she was chased out of the South Pole Palace, and who killed her in the wilderness of the southern region, Li Wanji had no idea. I will find out the truth and avenge you. Li Wanji's eyes were burning with anger. The entire secret realm trembled under his anger. There was still half a year before the South Pole Palace reopened. The ancient families and forces hidden all over the continent would select the most talented disciples to participate in the ceremony and be selected to enter the South Pole Palace. This was a good opportunity to sneak in. However, Li Wanji knew that he had no chance. He was too old to fool the experts of the South Pole Palace. Li Wanji did not dare to underestimate the South Pole Palace. It was a sacred place that had produced an immortal-level expert. Any deacon who came out of there would have a cultivation level no lower than his. Not to mention the peak masters of the 9 peaks. Each peak master's cultivation level was at the peak of the 9-star Great Emperor level. They were like demigods. If Li Wanji dared to barge in, he would definitely die. Even someone as powerful as Empress Xiantian had escaped death. His cultivation level was only at the beginner 9-star Great Emperor level. There was a huge gap between him and Empress Xiantian in the past. It seems that I have to find a talented person to sneak in for me. Li Wanji sighed. What could a 9-star Great Emperor do? He had to bow his head when he had to. At this moment, an idea flashed through his mind. He looked in the direction where Qin Hao had disappeared. That person seemed to be a good candidate. 5 days later, White Jade Tower, 4C City, Wuning Empire. 4C City was very close to Golden Light City. The city master of Golden Light City was Ning Chaofan's father. This city was very important to the Wuning Empire. It was the largest trading city in the Wuning Empire and controlled the economic lifeline of the empire. Tomorrow, there would be a grand auction held once every 5 years. The scale of the auction was huge and would definitely attract the attention of all the major forces in the southern region. Even the neighboring 4C City had a huge increase in population. There were more than 10 times more martial artists in the city than usual, and all of them had extraordinary backgrounds. White Jade Tower was the most famous restaurant in 4C City. The entire manor was built with white jade. It was sacred, solemn, and domineering. It was similar to a small palace. At this moment, in the hall on the first floor of White Jade Tower, 3 figures were sitting near the window. They were Qin Hao, and Ning Chaofan. As for the subordinate in black, the moment he woke up, he was chased away by Ning Chaofan. He was ordered to bring him back to his family to report his safety and inform his family in advance that Ning Chaofan was about to return home. "I will be home tomorrow. Home is still the best." Looking at the street outside from the window, Ning Chaofan still felt like he was in a dream. The coiling dragon wonder, the hidden dragon mystery realm, the emperor-level inheritance, and a narrow escape. If he had not been smart enough to follow Qin Hao, it was very likely that he would not have been able to return. However, since he was back, he would definitely be carefree and relaxed. Especially since tomorrow, the grand auction held once every 5 years in the martial Ning Empire would be held in Golden Light City. His father was the strongest person and would be in charge of the auction. Ning Chaofan wanted to give his father a surprise. Kair did not speak and continued to eat. The food in White Jade Tower was delicious, much better than the food in the northern borderline. Even the chefs in Xiao Yi's palace could not compare. However, she still felt a heavy burden in her heart. Xiao Han had not been found yet. Qin Hao was also eating. Compared to Kair, who was wolfing down her food, his chopsticks moved very slowly. There was a strange flow of spirit qi on his chopsticks. It was so thin that it was difficult to see with the naked eye. There was even a strange magnetic field around him. Rather than saying that he was eating, it was better to say that he was cultivating. "Teacher, what level of the Venerate grade are you now?" Ning Chaofan asked. His eyes were fixed on Qin Hao's chopsticks. The chopsticks were suffused with a strange power as they picked up a piece of sweet and sour pork. However, the chopsticks did not come into contact with the food. Instead, they were hanging in the air, which was very strange. "Level 3 Yuan Venerate," Qin Hao said faintly. As soon as he finished speaking, the sweet and sour pork fell onto the plate because he was not concentrating. I failed again. Huh. Ning Chaofan's entire body leaned back and his chair fell to the ground, causing quite a commotion. He shouted, "Level 3 Yuan Venerate? Are you a monster?" They had only been out of the mystic realm for 5 days. At the time, Qin had fought the broken sword old man and been a level 1 Yuan Venerate. He had advanced 2 levels in just 5 days. Furthermore, Ning Chaofan had not even seen Qin Hao cultivate seriously. He had only been controlling that strange power. Chapter 1238. He didn't know what kind of power it was, but it was terrifying. If he got too close, he would feel as though his life and death were being controlled. It was very similar to Li Wanji's ability to control mystic realms. "What are you shouting about? It's embarrassing to say that you're a 3rd level Yuan Venerate." Qin Hao scolded as he continued to use his strange spiritual power to pick up the sweet and sour pork. The chopsticks contained nomological law power. The 7th level of the indestructible samsara art corresponded to the Yuan Venerate. After becoming a Yuan Venerate, Qin Hao immediately cultivated the 7th level after coming out of the mystic realm. However, he made no progress after cultivating for 5 days. He couldn't even reach the entry level. Instead, the 12 spiritual energies in his body were stimulated and his cultivation base unexpectedly increased. The power of nomological laws is much more difficult than the first 6 volumes of the indestructible samsara art. Qin Hao muttered to himself as the hand holding the chopsticks trembled. The sweet and sour pork in the middle of the chopsticks could fall at any time. The entry level of each volume of the indestructible samsara art was relatively difficult. However, the application of nomological law power was even more difficult. However, it made sense. Nomological laws were the ability of a god-grade powerhouse. As a mortal martialist, Qin Hao had yet to break through the limits of the Monarch grade. How could it not be difficult to come into contact with nomological laws now? Furthermore, his nomological laws weren't true nomological laws and couldn't be compared to god-grade laws. At best, they were pseudo-laws. Currently, Qin Hao wasn't a god and didn't have a divine spark. Naturally, he couldn't control the world or break the balance of the continent like a true god. The effect of pseudo-laws was actually very limited. They could only control a very small area and distort the elements within the area. For example, the area within a meter of Qin Hao's body. Qin Hao even believed that he wouldn't be able to control too large an area, even if his nomological law power reached perfection. After all, he wasn't a god, and his physical body couldn't withstand it. However, this was already enough, as long as he broke through to the Emperor Realm and recovered to the Emperor Realm. At that time, the 9th level of the indestructible samsara art would reach perfection. Qin Hao would be able to condense his own divine spark and use the nomological law power. Qin Hao dispersed his nomological law power, and his body immediately felt very relaxed. As he waved his chopsticks, the dishes on his plate were quickly stuffed. Is that kid a 3rd level Yuan Venerate? In 4C City, especially in this special period, it's indeed not enough. What is a mere rank 3 Yuan Venerate making a fuss about? They probably came from a remote place and haven't seen much of the world. Inside the White Jade Tower, the mocking laughter of many warriors could be heard. The warriors who entered the White Jade Tower naturally had extraordinary strength. It just so happened that Golden Light City was holding an auction. During this period of time, all the first-rate forces and top forces of the Southern Territory would be present. Even Monarch-level figures could be seen everywhere. Qin Hao was only a lower Yuan Venerate, so he was indeed an eyesore. A bunch of ignorant fools. Ning Chaofan snorted. How could the other Yuan Venerates compare to his teacher? Qin Hao had just become a level 1 Yuan Venerate, so he could challenge the level 7 Yuan Venerate Elder with a broken sword. Although he lost in the end, it still showed how terrifying Qin Hao was. Furthermore, now that his teacher had become a 3rd level Yuan Venerate, these trash martialists weren't even fit to carry his teacher's shoes. Keep a low profile. Keep a low profile, Qin Hao said. When have you ever kept a low profile? Usually, after keeping a low profile, you go on a killing spree. Ning Chaofan pulled up his chair and ate his meal obediently. He didn't dare disobey Qin Hao. Otherwise, he would have already made a move on those people. Qin Hao didn't mind. He was used to being looked down upon. Those who had looked down on him in the past, such as Ning Chaofan, would become obedient after a beating. His priority now was to find Xiao Han and the old demon. Secondly, there was something Qin Hao didn't understand. His law image could actually fuse with his body. Although his cultivation base hadn't increased after the fusion, the strength of his Yuan Qi had undergone a terrifying metamorphosis. When he recalled the power of the arrow he had shot in the mystic realm, it still felt like a dream. However, his law image had been severely injured and was currently in a deep slumber. He would have to wait for it to wake up before he could figure out the reason. The most important thing now was still to find Xiao Han and the old demon. There were currently no clues about Xiao Han and the old demon. However, along the way, he had heard some news about Huang and Ahe. The reason Qin Hao and Ning Chaofan had returned to Golden Light City was because of the 2 brothers from the ancient beast race. Everyone, this year's auction ceremony is going to be amazing. Of course it is. Rumor has it that Western Liang's Dangu has brought a kind of miraculous elixir that can instantly allow a martialist above the sage grade to advance without the need to refine it. This batch of miraculous elixirs has already attracted the attention of the 3 great royal families and the 4 great sect. Tomorrow's auction is going to be spectacular. It's not just the 3 great royal families and the 4 great sect. All the first-rate factions in the southern region have arrived. Golden Light City is now filled with rulers, yet Yuan Venerate martialists like us have been squeezed into the 4C City. Our skills are inferior. I am a dignified 8th level Yuan Venerate, yet I have always been treated like a slave wherever I went. How vexing. I also heard that Blazing Sun Sacred Hall did not hesitate to auction off the ancient beast warriors they had just captured in order to obtain Danji's miraculous elixir, someone said. Thump. Qin Hao's heart skipped a beat. It seemed like the news he had heard on the way here was true. Huang and Ahe had indeed been captured. Brother-in-law, I am so worried about sister. Kerr has suddenly had a bad premonition. Xiao Han will be fine. Let's buy Ahe and Huang before we inquire about Han or his whereabouts. It will be much more convenient with young Master Ning around. Qin Hao rubbed K.'s head. Of course, of course. Ning Qiaofan smiled apologetically. His master's matters were his matters as well. Since his master's wife had gone missing, the disciple naturally had to mobilize the family's forces to search for her. He hoped that those first-rate forces in the southern region would not provoke his master's wife. Otherwise, they would probably be removed from the southern region. As long as he did not clash with the direct disciples of the three royal families and the core disciples of the four major sect, Ning Qiaofan was not afraid of anyone in the southern region. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the sky outside exploded with a roar, and the entire White Jade restaurant shook. What happened? The martial artists who were eating were all shocked. Oh my God, that's the Golden Crow chariot. The people from Blazing Sun's Sacred Hall are here. A martial artist on the street pointed to the sky in shock. Rumble. Upon hearing the name of Blazing Sun's Sacred Hall, everyone who was still eating ran out. Blazing Sun's Sacred Hall was one of the top forces in the southern region. Their position was unshakable, and they were comparable to the three royal families. Let's go out and take a look. Qin Hao put down his chopsticks. Blazing Sun, Sacred Hall, the sect that captured the brothers Huang and Ahe and was preparing to auction them off. Haha, what a powerful force. As the crowd stepped out, Qin Hao walked out and found that the entire street was filled with martial artists. It was unusually vast and spectacular. Screech. At this moment, a sharp bird cry reverberated in the sky, causing the void to tremble. The sound was getting closer and closer. In the distance, several large golden crows flew over from the void. All of them were adult golden crows, and their bodies were covered in flames. At this moment, the Four Seas City seemed to have been placed in a furnace. The golden crow was a low-grade, emperor-level demonic beast. Although its bloodline was not as good as the rainbow demon sparrow, it was still very rare. Yao Lao of Chiang University had a small golden crow. Qin Hao had seen it before, and Yao Lao treated it as a family member. The golden crow in front of him was actually being driven around like a slave. An unknown huge chain was tied around its neck, and it was flapping its wings vigorously to pull the golden chariot. The chariot was huge, and the figures of the powerhouses of the Blazing Sun Sacred Hall stood on it. Their auras were extremely powerful. The leader exuded the terrifying aura of Emperor Yuan. Chapter 1239. Translator. Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo Studio Wife is important. Such a lineup was not the slightest bit weaker than the four major sections. Only the three royal families in the southern region were qualified to do so. Who are those people? Qin Hao asked, pointing in the direction of Golden Light City. Giant Kuanpung beasts and eight-winged black dragons were not commonly seen. Although they were not true giant dragons and should have been transformed from strange black pythons, they were still shocking enough. The rocks are carrying the Leaf family of the north, and the black dragons are carrying the Xianyuan family of the south. Ning Qiaofan secretly clenched his fists. His face was very ugly. Even the direct descendants of the south and north had come. This auction was indeed grand enough to overflow the sky. His father, the city lord of Golden Light City, could not control the situation at all. However, Ning Qiaofan was not worried. With the direct descendants of the Li and Xianyuan families coming out, the Ningwu Empire would naturally dispatch enough people to support them. Golden Light City was the largest trading city of the Ningwu Empire, controlling the economic lifeline of the empire. It was vital to prevent the Li and Xianyuan families from acting wildly. The Li family of the north and the Xianyuan family of the south? Qin Hao frowned. No wonder he felt that there was a familiar aura on the back of the Kuanpung and the Black Dragon. He instinctively felt disgusted. It turned out that it was his old enemy. However, Qin Hao was surprised that the proud god nation was controlled by two forces. The Li family had enough capital to rival the Xianyuan family. Yes, at this moment, Qin Hao figured it out. 600 years ago, Xianyuan Wutian questioned Qin Hao's alchemy skills and quarreled with him. In the end, Dindu was angry and chased the Gravity Emperor from the East Continent to the southern region. Xin Yuan Wutian was so scared that he hid in his nest and did not dare to go out. At that time, Qin Hao stood in the void and looked down at the territory of the proud god nation. He felt very puzzled in his heart. As the #1 expert of the southern region, the emperor of the proud god nation, Xin Yuan Wutian, his imperial palace was actually not in the most central position, but rather towards the south of the proud god nation. It turned out that there was another emperor in the north. The Xin Yuan clan and the Li clan each occupied half of the world. But why didn't he see the Li family's representative at the imperial banquet? Perhaps because there were too many people. Qin Hao did not remember. However, in retrospect, Xin Yuan Wutian had closed the door and refused to fight. The imperial palace had the support of the matrix, which had been accumulated for thousands of years. It was the foundation of the Xin Yuan family. Qin Hao could not do anything to him for a while. In the end, the Golden Crowtharch and the Golden Crowtharch had appeared out of nowhere. They wanted to teach Qin Hao a lesson because they couldn't bear to see him being so presumptuous in the southern mountain region. However, Qin Hao killed 2 birds with 1 stone and killed them at the same time. From then on, the Golden Crow twin emperors became a huge scandal in the southern region. I wonder how the Golden Crowtharch and the Golden Crowtharch are related to the Blazing Sun Sacred Hall. After all, they all play with fire, so there should be some connection between them. With a slight smile, Qin Hao put the past aside. It was just a small matter. Heroes did not talk about their past achievements. He turned around and was about to return to the White Jade restaurant to continue eating when he realized that Kate-Er's face was unusually pale. There was surprise in her eyes, but in the blink of an eye, that surprise turned into fear. Her delicate body trembled uneasily as if she had been frightened. Kate-Er, what's wrong? Qin Hao saw that Kay was acting strangely and touched her head. Brother-in-law, just now, I seem to feel big sister's aura. Kay-Er's little hand gripped the corner of her skirt tightly. Boom! Qin Hao's head shook, and his eyes widened like torches. Are you sure? Kay-Er shook her head first before nodding immediately. I'm sure. It's just that the feeling is very vague. As she had signed a contract with Xiao Han and made a blood oath, Kay-Er could feel Xiao Han's presence more clearly than Qin Hao. However, Kay-Er's feeling was very vague. It was very likely that there was a powerful seal on Xiao Han's body. That was why she was so nervous. Where is Xiao Han's aura? Qin Hao's tone was very, very cold. On the back of the 8-winged black dragon. Kay-Er replied, Ning Chao fan, let's go. Qin Hao's ring lit up, and the dog's spirit soared into the air. It spread its wings and emitted the aura of a venerable beast. This scene attracted the attention of many people. Teacher, where are we going? Ning Chao fan asked. We can still go and get it. Let's go back to Golden Light City. Even if it was just a vague feeling, Qin Hao would not let it go. But teacher, we haven't finished eating. I only ate a few mouthfuls. What are you eating for? Let's go back to Golden Light City. Qin Hao's tone was irrefutable. He roared, and his eyes were red. He pulled Kay-Er up and landed on the dog spirit's back. Eating? Was eating more important? Or was his wife more important? Ning Chao fan gritted his teeth and soared into the air. He rode on the dog spirits, and pressed his entire body against it, hugging it tightly. Boom! Brother Dog spread its wings and flew toward Golden Light City with a furious roar. Great! Blazing Sun Sacred Hall had imprisoned Huang in black and dared to auction them off. The old demon had been captured by the Night Luo Palace. Even Xiao Wudi's beloved daughter had fallen into the hands of the Xin Yuan family. This trip was not over yet. A big dog that can fly? What a weirdo. They're going to Golden Light City in public. They don't know that Golden Light City is full of disciples from first-rate and top factions. All the inns and restaurants are not welcoming guests. Who would dare to go there unless they were martial monarch? They must be looking for their own humiliation. Ha ha ha. A large number of martialists in front of the White Jade building laughed heartily as they watched Qin Hao and the others leave. Young people had not seen the world and did not know the dangers of the world. Now that they were going to Golden Light City, they might be killed on the spot by those first-rate sects if they were not careful. Otherwise, Sea City would not be crowded with Yuan venerates. These Yuan venerates, who usually had remarkable abilities, were like rats and ants that could not see the light. They were not qualified to mingle in Golden Light City. They could only wait until the auction ceremony started tomorrow before they could carefully participate. However, what had that white-haired young man shouted just now? Ning Chaofan? Ning Chaofan is the son of Golden Light City's city lord. His talent is top-notch. How could he be ordered around like a slave? Furthermore, I heard that young Master Ning participated in the Coiling Dragon Wonder half a month ago. The mountain collapsed and many people died and went missing. Young Master Ning happened to be on the list of missing people. The Ning family of Golden Light City is still searching for him. Could it be that Ning Chaofan is not dead? Who knows? Maybe he's an imposter. Everyone discussed for a while before returning to the White Jade, building one after another. The collapse of the Coiling Dragon Wonder was definitely a tragic tragedy in the southern region. After all, many disciples of first-rate factions had died at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. It was even rumored that a disciple of the Xianyuan family had gone missing at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. However, this matter was covered up for the time being when the auction ceremony started. Even so, City Lord Ning did not give up on searching for his son. Even the City Lord of Proud Spring City had issued a notice to search for Xianyuan Zhao. If the young man brought by the white-haired martialist was really City Lord Ning's son, it would definitely cause a big commotion. Wouldn't it be strange if only young Master Ning went back when everyone else was dead? Of course, young Master Ning was nothing compared to the current auction ceremony. After all, the 3 royal families and the 4 major sects were all present at this auction. There was even the Knight Azura Palace's Palace Lord. It was said that the Knight Azura Palace's Palace Lord was a supreme beauty. To be able to admire the Empress's magnificence at the auction was worth it even if they did not obtain any treasures. However, what the marshalists had not expected was that the commotion caused by Qin Hao's departure had shaken the entire southern region. It had even caused a war between the 3 great empires and the 10,000 Cultivator Union. Noble Hall Mobile Version. Chapter 1240. Qian Qian. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Wife is important. Such a lineup was not the slightest bit weaker than the 4 major sections. Only the 3 royal families in the southern region were qualified to do so. Who are those people? Qin Hao asked, pointing in the direction of Golden Light City. Giant rocks and 8-winged black dragons were not common. Although they were not real dragons and were probably evolved from strange black pythons, they were still shocking enough. The rocks carry the Leaf family of the north, and the black dragons carry the Xianyuan family of the south. Ning Chaofan secretly clenched his fists, his expression ugly. Even the direct descendants of the south and north had come. This auction was indeed grand enough to overflow the sky. His father, the city lord of Golden Light City, could not control the situation at all. However, Ning Chaofan was not worried. With the direct descendants of the Li and Xianyuan families present, the Ningwu Empire would naturally dispatch enough people to support them. Golden Light City was Ningwu Empire's #1 trading city, controlling the empire's economic lifeline. It was crucial that the Li and Xianyuan families were not allowed to behave atrociously. The Li family of the north, the Xianyuan family of the south? Qin Hao frowned. No wonder he felt that there was a familiar aura on the back of the Kuan Peng and the Black Dragon. He instinctively felt disgusted. It turned out that it was his old enemy. However, Qin Hao was surprised that the Proud God Nation was controlled by 2 forces. The Li family had enough capital to rival the Xianyuan family. Yes, at this moment, Qin Hao figured it out. 600 years ago, at the Imperial Banquet, Xianyuan Wutian questioned Qin Hao's alchemy and quarreled with him. In the end, Dinda chased the Gravity Emperor from the East Continent to the southern region. scaring Xinyuan Wutian so much that he did not dare to go out, completely losing face in front of his house. At that time, Qin Hao stood in the void and looked down at the territory of the proud god nation. He felt very puzzled in his heart. As the #1 expert of the southern region, the emperor of the proud god nation, Xinyuan Wutian, his imperial palace was actually not in the most central position, but rather towards the south of the proud god nation. It turned out that there was another emperor in the north. The Li and Xinyuan families each occupied half of the proud god nation. But why did he not see the Li family's representative at the imperial banquet? Maybe there were too many people that Qin Hao did not remember. However, thinking about it, Xinyuan Wutian, the emperor Xinyuan Wutian god nation, Qin Hao at that time. The palace was the array formation, and it had been thousands of years. That was the Xinyuan families. Qin Hao for the time. In the end, the Golden Crowtharch and the Golden Crowtharch had appeared out of nowhere. They wanted to teach Qin Hao a lesson because they couldn't stand Qin Hao being so presumptuous in the southern region. However, Qin Hao killed 2 birds with 1 stone and killed them in the sky. I wonder how the Golden Crowtharch and the Golden Crowtharch are related to the blazing Sun Sacred Hall. After all, they all play with fire, so there should be some connection between them. With a smile, Qin Hao put the past behind him. It was just a small matter. Heroes did not talk about their past glory. He turned around and was about to return to the White Jade restaurant to continue eating when he realized that K.'s face was unusually pale. Her eyes were filled with surprise, but in the blink of an eye, that surprise turned into fear. Her delicate body trembled uneasily, as if she had been frightened. K.', what's wrong? Qin Hao saw that K. was acting strangely and patted her head. Brother-in-law, just now, I seem to feel big sister's aura. K.'s little hand gripped the corner of her skirt tightly. Boom! Qin Hao's head shook and his eyes widened. Are you sure? K. shook her head at first, but she immediately nodded and said, I'm sure. It's just that the feeling is very vague. Because she had signed a contract with Xiao Han and made a blood oath, K. could feel Xiao Han's presence more clearly than Qin Hao. However, K.'s feeling was very vague. It was very likely that Xiao Han's body had been sealed by a powerful seal. That was why she was so nervous. Where's Xiao Han's aura? Qin Hao's tone was very, very cold. On the back of the 8-winged black dragon. K.', replied. Ning Chao fan, let's go. Qin Hao's ring lit up, and the dog's spirit soared into the air. It spread its wings and emitted the aura of a venerable beast. This scene attracted the attention of many people. Teacher, where are we going? Ning Chao Fan asked. We can still go and get it. Let's go back to Golden Light City. Even if it was just a vague feeling, Qin Hao would not let it go. But teacher, we haven't finished eating. I only ate a few mouthfuls. What are you eating for? Let's go back to Golden Light City. Qin Hao's tone was irrefutable. He roared, and his eyes were red. He pulled K. up and landed on the dog spirit's back. Eating? Was eating more important? Or was his wife more important? Ning Chao Fan gritted his teeth and soared into the air. He rode on the dog spirits, but pressed his whole body against it, hugging it tightly. Boom! Brother Dog spread its wings and flew toward Golden Light City with a furious roar. Great! Blazing Sun Sacred Hall had imprisoned Huang and Black and dared to auction them off. The old demon had been captured by the Night Luo Palace. Even Xiao Wudi's beloved daughter had fallen into the hands of the Xinyuan family. This trip was not over yet. A big dog that can fly? What a weirdo. They're going to Golden Light City openly. They don't know that Golden Light City is full of disciples from first-rate and top factions. All the inns and restaurants are not welcoming guests. Who would dare to go there if they weren't martial monarch-grade powerhouses? They're probably going to humiliate themselves. Ha! A large number of martialists in front of the White Jade building laughed as they watched Qin Hao and the others fly away. Young people had not seen the world and did not know the dangers of the world. Now that they were in a Golden Light City, they might be killed on the spot by those first-rate sects if they were not careful. Otherwise, for Sea City would not be full of Yuan venerates. These Yuan venerates, who were usually very powerful, were like rats and ants that could not see the light. They were not qualified to mingle in Golden Light City and could only wait until the auction ceremony started tomorrow before they could carefully participate. However, what had that white-haired young man shouted just now? Ning Chaofan? Ning Chaofan is the son of Golden Light City's city lord. His talent is top-notch. How could he be ordered around like a slave? Furthermore, I heard that half a month ago, young Master Ning participated in the Coiling Dragon Wonder. The mountain peak collapsed, and many people died and went missing. Young Master Ning happened to be on the list of missing people. Even now, the Ning family of Golden Light City is still searching for him. Could it be that Ning Chaofan is not dead? Who knows? Maybe he's an imposter. Everyone discussed for a while before returning to the White Jade Building. The collapse of the Coiling Dragon Wonder was definitely a tragic tragedy in the southern region. After all, many disciples from first-rate factions had died at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. It was even said that a disciple from a branch of the Xianyuan family had also gone missing at the Coiling Dragon Wonder. However, this matter was covered up for the time being when the auction ceremony was held. Even so, City Lord Ning still did not give up on searching for his son. Even the City Lord of Proud Spring City had issued a notice to search for Xianyuan Zhao. If the young man brought by the white-hair martialist was really City Lord Ning's son, returning like this would definitely cause a big commotion. Wouldn't it be strange if only young Master Ning returned if everyone else was dead? Of course, young Master Ning was nothing compared to the current auction ceremony. After all, the 3 royal families and the 4 major sects were all present at this auction. There was even the Knight Azura Palace's Palace Lord. It was said that the Knight Azura Palace's Palace Lord was a supreme beauty. To be able to admire the Empress's magnificence at the auction was worth it even if they did not obtain any treasures. However, what the martialists had not expected was that the commotion caused by Qin Hao's return had shaken the entire southern region. It had even caused a war between the 3 great empires and involved the 10,000 Cultivator Union. Chapter 1241. He was ignored. Flying towards Golden Light City, Qin Hao asked Ning Chaofan about the specific situation of the southern region's forces on the way. In the southern region, the 3 sovereigns and 4 sects reigned supreme. The 3 sovereigns and 4 sects had the absolute right to speak. Any party had the strength to stir up the foundation of the southern region. The 3 sovereigns were the Ning family, the Li family, and the Xianyuan family. They established empires and occupied more than 70% of the southern region's territory. The remaining 30% were weak kingdoms and duchies. The Myriad Cultivator Alliance was also among them. The 4 sects were the Blazing Sun Temple, Wuxord Sect, Night Net Palace, and Arhut Palace. The 4 sects each had their own unique cultivation philosophy. Although they had not established a country, they were not controlled by the 3 sovereigns. Within the 4 sects, there were also emperor-level powerhouses. Perhaps their foundation was still a little lacking compared to the 3 sovereigns, but it was enough to make the 3 sovereigns wary. The 4 sects were the top forces in the southern region. Their status had been unshakable for thousands of years. In addition, first-rate forces such as the Rune Origin Pavilion, Herbal Medicine Hall, Spirit Beast Sect, Slayer Sect, and so on were also quite powerful. The Rune Origin Pavilion was good at inscriptions. The Herbal Medicine Hall was similar to Dangu in Western Liang. They were all composed of alchemists. Spirit Beast Sect was good at taming beasts. As for Slayer Sect was more mysterious. Ning Chaofan could not say much about it, because no one knew where the sect was, how many disciples it had, and how high the cultivation of the sect master and elders were. They were like a group of lone wolves, doing things their own way. However, no one underestimated Slayer Sect's ability. To be able to step into a first-rate force, they were naturally extraordinary. There were even rumors in the southern region that Slayer Sect might be a giant comparable to the 4 sects. However, it was too mysterious. The upper echelons had never shown their faces and fought with other powerhouses. That was why they placed Slayer's sect in the position of a first-rate force. The four sects were the strongest forces in the southern region. They ruled the various parts of the southern region and were awe-inspiring. It had been so for hundreds of years. Qin Hao listened and silently remembered it, as expected of the southern region. Not to mention the three sovereigns, the people from the four sects in Four Seas City were already strong enough. If any of the sects were placed in Western Liang, they would definitely have the ability to sweep the countries. The four academies of Luo Empire four sects were nothing in the sects. Even Dangu was weaker in front of the four great sects. At best, Dangu could only be considered a first-rate force in the southern region. This was the southern region. The southern region was rich and powerful. It was superior to the northern region. I'm afraid it won't be easy to get someone from Blazing Sun Temple. Qin Hao thought. The auction was the only way to save He Huang. In fact, even if they were to act according to the rules, the auction might not go smoothly. Qin Hao did not have any power backing him up. He had saved He and Huang, so it was inevitable that he would attract powerful enemies. However, Qin Hao wasn't worried about this. At worst, he wouldn't leave the martial Ning Empire and would stay in the Golden Light City. With eldest young Master Ning and his father around, other forces wouldn't dare to break into the Ning Mansion to snatch people away, right? Moreover, the finale of this year's auction was a strange pill brought by Shi Liang Dangu. Dan Ji's people actually came. He didn't know if it was Yao Lao leading the team or Xiang Yue, but the two idiots nibbling copper and iron bite should be here. And that strange pill was most likely his own Saint's soul pill. Since Dangu came to the martial Ning Empire as a guest, he should be protected by the martial Ning Emperor. With Dangu here, Qin Hao had more confidence. At that time, if anyone didn't have eyes, he wouldn't sell them the pill. Teacher, we're here. Let's stay in the western city's Wenhua Garden for now. Wait for me to gather some good news, then we'll make further plans. Ning Chaofan pointed to the west side of the Golden Light City. There was a group of extravagant buildings that were particularly conspicuous. Under Qin Hao's command, Dog Spirit flew to the Wenhua Garden. Looking down, the entire Golden Light City was very vast and bustling. There were a large number of demonic beasts flying in the sky, as well as many void battleships. There was an endless stream of experts. It was even bigger than Luoshui's Imperial City, but it was bigger than Luoshui's Imperial City. It was faintly comparable to Daliao's Imperial City. However, everyone was very well behaved. No one dared to go on a rampage, as expected of the southern territory. Qin Hao praised. A big city in the martial Ning Empire was even bigger than the Yi clan's Imperial City in Luoshui. As for the Four Seas City, it was most likely an auxiliary city of the Golden Light City. Roar! Dog Spirit landed in front of the Wenhua Garden. It was the property of Ning Chaofan's family and the property of the City Lord's mansion. Naturally, it was luxurious. However, the Jinghua Garden in the east side of the city was even more luxurious than the Wenhua Garden. As for the Jinghua Garden, it was also the property of the Ning family. However, only the direct descendants of the royal family could stay in the Jinghua Garden. Usually, it was not open to the public. At this time, it was probably already occupied by the direct descendants of the three royal families. As a branch of the Ning family, Ning Chaofan could not afford to offend the direct descendants. That was why he brought Qin Hao to the Wenhua Garden. He Huang had been captured by the Blazing Sun Temple. As a top force, it was not beneficial for them to have a direct confrontation. Whether the old demon was in the Night Luo Palace's camp required further investigation. This included the more powerful Xian Yuan royal family. After all, K.'s feeling was very vague. Whether Xiaohan had fallen into their hands or not required careful investigation. Even if Ning Chaofan was the young master of Golden Light City, he would not dare to openly barge into the Jinghua Garden and confront the Xian Yuan family. Letting Qin Hao stay outside, Ning Chaofan entered the Wenhua Garden to find a reliable elder and find out the truth. How impressive! stood outside the door and stretched her head to look inside. The Wenhua garden was a huge manor. It was divided into more than a dozen small courtyards. Each courtyard was independent and had a beautiful environment. It was convenient to entertain members of different forces. At this time, it had become a temporary inn. There were too many martial artists entering Golden Light City, so it had to be open to the public. However, not everyone could enter the Wenhua garden. At the very least, only members of first-rate forces were qualified to enter. Moreover, the expenses inside were extremely high. In this short period of time, groups of people passed by Qin Hao and entered the Wenhua garden. Every group was outstanding and had an extraordinary aura. When these forces entered, many young people were attracted by K.'s beauty. They subconsciously stopped to take a few more glances. With Ning Chaofan, a powerful follower, Qin Hao allowed K.', to recover her true appearance. After all, it was very uncomfortable to have fake skin on one's face. They waited outside for more than an hour and watched as 5 or 6 forces entered. However, they did not see Ning Chaofan return. Roar! The dog spirit was losing patience. Qin Hao also frowned slightly. This should not be happening. Let's go in and take a look. Qin Hao pulled K.', into the Wenhua garden. There was a reception hall inside. The forces that stayed in the hall had to go through a detailed registration. During this period of time, there were all kinds of people in the city. In order to prevent accidents that could threaten the direct members of the 3 royal families, it was necessary to transfer every force. Entering the hall, it was extremely busy. The figures of martial artists shuttled back and forth. Every force had brought a large number of disciples. The registration workload was very heavy. "Steward, I would like a courtyard to stay in," Qin Hao said. His tone was very polite. After all, he was Ning Chaofan's subordinate and could be considered one of them. Furthermore, every steward was very busy. Qin Hao kept his cold and arrogant temperament and spoke with a smile. However, the steward did not respond to Qin Hao even after he called out to him several times in a row. He was being ignored. Usually, it was Qin Hao who ignored others. He did not expect to be ignored by a servant of the Ning family. Even the genius of the East Continent, Zhou Wudao, did not dare to be so presumptuous to Qin Hao. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1242. Translator. Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo, Studio Spiritual Beast Sect. "Hey, my brother-in-law wants a courtyard. Did you hear that?" K. yelled loudly with her hands on her hips. She had left K. At a young age and was raised by Xiao Wudi. Later on, she stayed by Xiao Han's side. Her status was equivalent to that of the second princess of Daliao. Her yelling attracted the attention of many people. The disciples of the various sect looked surprised. K. was very beautiful. They wondered which noble or sect leader's daughter she was. "We don't have a room. Please go back." The housekeeper glanced at K. Before lowering his head again to record the accounts. His name was Jiahi. Seeing that Kerr was not dressed like a member of a first-rate sect, he did not have the time to deal with her. In fact, if he was not so busy, he would have found someone to chase Kerr out. Throughout the entire process, Jiahi did not even look at Qin Hao. "You, K." glared at him fiercely. Qin Hao stepped forward and grabbed K.'s wrist. Forget it. This housekeeper was very busy. His professionalism was worthy of praise. As for whether they had a room or not, Ning Chaofan was back. Was there a need to worry about not having a room? Qin Hao smiled gently and pulled K. to a corner of the hall. There were a few luxurious chairs there. They were big and soft like sofas. The two of them sat down and waited for Ning Chaofan to pick them up. What kind of attitude is that? K. was still glaring at the housekeeper. She sat down angrily. Roar. Seeing this, the dog spirit also jumped onto the sofa and lay down beside Qin Hao. Jiahi seemed to have noticed K.'s dissatisfaction. He sneered and looked up at Qin Hao. He realized that Qin Hao had actually sat down in the hall. Could it be? Did he want to stay and not leave? The Wenhua Garden does not accept low-level martial artists. It closes before sunset. Get out. Jia picked up his pen and pointed it at Qin Hao. "Can I sit?" Qin Hao raised his eyebrows. Putting aside the fact that he was Ning Chaofan's teacher, in reality, Qin Hao had yet to admit that he had accepted Ning Chaofan as a student. However, even if he was an ordinary person, he wouldn't be blasted away if he sat down, right? Wasn't this a humiliation? The steward's unkind attitude didn't resemble the Ning family's way of treating guests. It didn't have the bearing of a member of the imperial family. I said no means no. Get out. Jia said again. His tone was rude and unreasonable, as if he was giving Qin Hao an order. Roar. The dog spirit stood on the sofa with its hind legs raised. Flames gathered in its mouth as it stared at Jia, he with its sharp eyes. It really wanted to roast this thing and eat it. A dog? Which sect are you from? Don't you know the rules of Wanhua Garden? Low-level martial artists and low-grade demonic beasts are not allowed to enter. Jia had not noticed before, but now he realized that Qin Hao had brought a demonic beast, and it was of such a low grade. What was even more hateful was that the dog was sitting on the sofa that the Ning family had prepared for their VIP guests. This was outrageous. Qin Hao was about to explain. Get out of here. Jia roared as he angrily rushed forward and grabbed Qin Hao's collar. Let go. Qin Hao's eyes darkened. Grabbing my collar? I said get out. Don't tell me you dare to behave atrociously in Wanhua Garden? Men. As soon as Jia said that, a group of armored soldiers rushed in from outside and surrounded Qin Hao and Ke. Qin Hao scanned the soldiers and saw that there were a total of 10 of them. All of them were high-level Yuan monarchs, and a leader was a mid-level Yuan venerate. With such a lineup, the Ning family was indeed worthy of being one of the 3 great royal families. Don't cause trouble. If you don't, we will kill you without mercy, the leading Yuan venerate said coldly. If it hadn't been for Qin Hao's extraordinary bearing and Ke-Er's beauty, he wouldn't have bothered to talk nonsense with them. Furthermore, killing people in Wanhua Garden wouldn't have a good impact on the Ning family. Haha, this kid. I wonder which first-rate faction's disciple brought a dog into Wanhua Garden to embarrass the Ning family. It will be a good show to watch. The crowd surged forward, instantly squeezing through the crowd. These disciples of the first-rate forces looked at Qin Hao as if they were looking at a monkey, gloating over his misfortune. I'll say it again. Are you going to walk out on your own? Or do you want me to send you out? The leading Yuan venerate took a step forward and a projection of a demonic ape appeared behind him. He was actually a rare Yuan soul realm martialist. At that moment, the disciples of the various major factions present had a change of expression. A mid-level Yuan venerate with a Yuan soul realm. If this person was placed in their sect, he would at least be an outer sect elder and an elder with real authority. Furthermore, this person was willing to be the leader of the guards for the Ning family. The Ning family was indeed impressive. The Golden Light City was just a branch of the martial Ning royal family. What if I don't leave? Qin Hao sneered. Did they really think that he had come willingly? If Ning Chaofan hadn't led the way, Qin Hao would have been in the Jinghua Garden in the East City, where he would have met up with Dan Ji's group. He wouldn't have appeared in the Wanhua Garden, which was a level higher than the Jinghua Garden. You are courting death, the Yuan venerate shouted when he saw that his persuasion was ineffective. He was about to absorb his soul into his body. Stop, a voice shouted. It was a pleasant voice that had a peculiar charm to it. Then, everyone saw a group of extraordinary figures walking in from the entrance of the hall. The leader was a young man with long white hair and dark green eyes, which made him look very demonic. The young man was holding a bamboo flute in his hand. Behind him were 3 old men and a group of disciples in green robes with stripes on them. They blasted through the crowd and entered the hall. Then, they saw Jia grabbing Qin Hao's collar. It's the Spirit Beast sect. It's the eldest direct disciple of the Spirit Beast sect's sect master, Changhalo. The disciples of the other sect exclaimed when they recognized Changhalo. This person had a head of white hair, dark green eyes, and a charming voice. His appearance was so outstanding that it was hard not to recognize him. This year's auction ceremony was indeed vast. Not only had the sage of the Blazing Sun Sacred Hall come, But the number one inner sect disciple of the Wuxword sect had also come. Even the eldest direct disciple of the Spirit Beast sect's sect master had been attracted. Although the Spirit Beast sect was a first-rate sect and couldn't compare to the Blazing Sun Sacred Hall, Changhelou's beast-taming ability was extremely strong. In fact, he wasn't much inferior to the sage of the Blazing Sun Sacred Hall. They had most likely come here to obtain the two ancient beast centaurs. There was almost no need to guess. The disciples of the other sect could guess the purpose of the Spirit Beast sect. The stronger the beast that the Spirit Beast sect members controlled, the higher their status would be. You're a guest. Don't you think that the Ning family is too stingy to drive people away by force? Changhelou said with a smile. There was a hint of reprimand in his tone, but even so, it was still so pleasant to the ears. His voice was like a beautiful melody, and many female cultivators in the field were completely mesmerized by his words. Jia He, who had scolded Qin Hao coldly, now bowed humbly as if he had seen his own father. So it's the guardian elders of the Spirit Beast sect and the sect master's chief disciple, young Master Changhelou. This humble one greets young Master Changhelou. Steward, you don't have to be so courteous. It's wrong for this brother to bring a demonic beast into the Wenhua Garden. Maybe it's his first time in Golden Light City, and he doesn't know the rules. As the saying goes, the ignorant are innocent. Why are you driving him away in public? Where is his dignity? Moreover, demonic beasts also have spirituality. Even a dog has the right to live fairly. Don't you think so, brother? Changhelou looked at Qin Hao with a smile. His voice was full of charm and intoxicating. He naturally patted the dog's spirit with his hand, and his bewitching eyes suddenly flashed with a green light. Roar! The dog's spirit felt as if a thought had poured into its mind. Its originally angry mind inexplicably calmed down and became as clear as water. Chapter 1243. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo, studio name a price. Changhelou spoke generously and behaved elegantly. With a few words, he resolved Qin Hao's impasse and won the praise and admiration of many people, instantly raising the bearing of the disciples of the Spirit Beast sect. This made Qin Hao seem like a boorish person who did not know etiquette. At this moment, as his palm patted the dog spirit inexplicably developed a good impression of Changhelou. Also, under the influence of the strange thoughts in his mind, he really wanted to kneel at Changhelou's feet and submit to him. Telekinesis beast. Qin Hao's eyes darkened. The people of the Spirit Beast sect were all beast tamers, yet Changhelou actually wanted to secretly enslave Brother Dog. Although he was helping him on the surface, it was not very nice of him to secretly do something like this. After all, Brother Dog was his demonic beast. However, Qin Hao was not worried at all and did not stop him. Trying to enslave the next emperor of the Medicine Valley with his telekinesis, he was clearly offering his face for Brother Dog to slap. Roar! Sure enough, after being invaded by the strange thoughts, the Beast Emperor's inheritance in the dog spirit's body burst forth with a mighty emperor's aura. The aura rushed toward Changhelou's telekinesis and tore it into nothingness. The dog spirit immediately regained consciousness and actually spoke in human language. He shouted at Changhelou, "Is a human Yuan venerate worthy of enslaving me?" His voice was unusually coarse, overbearing, and condescending, as if he regarded humans as ants. As the aura of the Emperor's aura was released, the nearby martialists were intimidated by the dog spirit and took a few steps back. Their minds were affected, as if the big dog in front of them was the king of dogs. Although it was absurd, everyone had the same feeling. Changhelou only felt a thunderclap in his ears. His expression changed drastically as he hurriedly distanced himself and looked at the dog's spirit in amazement. Instantly, the hall quieted down. The martialists were all dumbfounded. Even Qin Hao was dumbfounded. He asked the dog spirit, "You can speak?" Could have been stimulated and the inheritance was causing trouble? Woof, 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 woof. A series of dog barks responded to Qin Hao. 3 black lines appeared on Qin Hao's forehead. He was speechless. Brother's magical beast is so strange, Chang Lo said. As the direct disciple of the head of the spirit beast sect, there was no doubt about his talent. When it came to training magical beasts, he had never failed. Although the psychokinesis he released just now was not very strong, it was more than enough to deal with a wild dog with inferior bloodline. However, he was reprimanded by the dog spirit instead. This was something that had never happened before. Chang Geluo felt extremely unwell. The faces of the 3 old men from the spirit beast sect were all twisted. The sect master's eldest direct disciple had actually failed to tame a beast. Moreover, he had failed because of dog. How could this be possible? Bastard, Jia shouted and looked at Chang Lo. This dog is wild and hard to tame. It has low intelligence, just like its owner. It almost hurt you. Is young master Chang Lo all right? Chang Lo waved his hand. Although he was fine, he was a little embarrassed. Hello. At this time, one of the 3 old men from the spirit beast sect muttered, as if to say that the auction was more important. Don't waste time with boring people. Chang Lo nodded and said to Jia, Steward, are there any empty courtyards in the Wenhua Park? Yes, of course there is. The Heavenly Flower Courtyard is still empty. Young master and protector elders, please follow me. Jia hurriedly replied with a respectful attitude as he led the way for the spirit beast sect. Qin Hao could not help but frown. Hey, didn't you just say that there are no empty rooms? Kair blocked Jia. Previously, her brother-in-law had praised him for his professionalism. Looking at it now, he was just a glib-tongued person who spoke the human language when he saw people and the ghost when he saw ghosts. Zhang He, young Master Luo, and the elders of the spirit beast sect are here. Naturally, there will be some. As for you guys, scram to wherever you should be. Low-level martial artists, don't dirty our Ning clan's Wenhua Park. Jia said impatiently. The 3 elders of the spirit beast sect smiled. Their status was naturally not something that Qin Hao and Kair could compare to. Steward Jia did his job well. Brother, are you going to participate in the auction? Have the people from the sect arrived? Chang Luo turned around and looked at Qin Hao, his tone friendly. Yes. Qin Hao nodded. However, I don't have sect. Then are you willing to work for me? If so, you can follow me to the Tianhua Park. Of course, you can also join our spirit beast sect. I have a good impression of you. If you become a disciple of the spirit beast sect, I will teach you some skills in taming beasts in my spare time. The smile on Chang Luo's face became even warmer. His handsome face was somewhat intoxicating. Suddenly, the surrounding martial artists were shocked. Chang Luo had actually taken the initiative to invite someone to work for him. He could even let Qin Hao join the spirit beast sect and personally teach him. No one questioned the weight of Chang Luo's words. He was the head disciple of the sect leader. To Qin Hao, it was like reaching the heavens in a single step. Although the martial artists present were also disciples of first-rate factions, they were only ordinary disciples. How could they compare to Chang Luo? They weren't even fit to carry Chang Luo's shoes. Many people couldn't help but envy Qin Hao. Even the 3 guardian elders of the spirit beast sect were shocked. Chang Luo had never taken the initiative to show goodwill to anyone. Even when facing Yu Qianyang of the Blazing Sun Temple, he was still calm. Today, he was being courteous. It was a bit abnormal. No need. I'm used to my freedom. Moreover, someone will come to the Wenhua Park to pick us up later. Qin Hao smiled, causing the crowd to sigh. Chang Luo had taken the initiative to invite him, but he had been rejected. Was he looking down on the spirit beast sect? Brat, you're arrogant. In an instant, the faces of the disciples of the spirit beast sect all darkened. Disrespecting the eldest senior brother was equivalent to disrespecting the sect. You don't know how to appreciate favors. Steward Jia also laughed. Giving up on the spirit beast sect was equivalent to giving up on the opportunity to change one's fate. Foolish. It's all right. Even if you don't want to join my sect, you can still follow me. The Tianhua court is quite big. Chang Luo spoke again. However, The warm smile on his face had disappeared. There was a hint of anger and embarrassment in his eyes. I don't know you. Aren't you being too enthusiastic? Do I know you? Qin Hao said. This person was indeed overly enthusiastic. He must have something up his sleeve. Brat, you don't know what's good for you. Our eldest senior brother invited you. It's your good fortune. Men, take him away. Finally, a disciple of the spirit beast sect couldn't take it anymore. He came forward and prepared to forcefully take Qin Hao away. Changhe Luo waved his hand. He walked to Qin Hao and said, Brother, why do you have to make the situation so tense? Don't you understand what I mean? What you mean? What do you mean? Qin Hao's eyes narrowed. He sized up Changhe Luo. Could it be that this person had a strange fetish and had taken a liking to him? Thinking of this, Qin Hao felt a chill run down his spine. Cough, cough. I'm very normal. Just say it. How much will it take for you to sell her to me? Changhe Luo suddenly turned around and pointed at Kei. A warm smile appeared on his face again. His voice was full of magic. Name a price. I want this beast girl. Jiutian Divine Emperor. It was said that the two centaurs captured by the blazing Sun Temple were also revered beasts. Qiao was naturally not inferior to them. However, whether or not they were more outstanding than the centaurs, that was unknown. Elder One saw that Kei was exuding a golden aura, and there was a seven-colored light flowing between her eyebrows. Her grade was probably not low, so he should believe in Changhe Luo's judgment. You can leave now. Changhe Luo smiled faintly after getting the approval of the sect's elders and gestured for Qin Hao to leave. What he meant was that he had picked up the money and could scram. Originally, he hadn't wanted to embarrass Qin Hao. He had invited him again and again because he wanted to resolve this matter privately so that both parties could conclude this transaction happily. Qin Hao had brought two demonic beasts out with him, so he was obviously a beastmaster. Since they were both beastmasters, Changhe Luo's enthusiasm was to tell him, I'll buy your demonic beasts. However, Qin Hao didn't give him any face and repeatedly rejected him, trampling on Changhe Luo's good intentions. Fine, didn't you say that I couldn't afford it? Was 500,000 enough? Could you afford it? I'm afraid you've never seen so much money in your entire life. Of course, now that Changhe Luo had given him the money. However, whether Qin Hao dared to take it or not was another matter altogether. 500,000 earth crystals wasn't a small sum. Since you didn't have a sect backing you, and the warriors present were all disciples of a first-rate sect, did you dare to take it? Did you dare to leave? Go out and try. In the current situation, Changhe Luo believed that Qin Hao had to bow his head and admit his mistake, hand over Kei, and become Changhe Luo's follower. This was the only way out. In that case, Changhe Luo wouldn't treat Qin Hao badly. Otherwise, once he stepped out of this hall, what awaited Qin Hao would be a fatal disaster. Not only would he lose Kei, but he wouldn't be able to get the money either. It had to be said that Changhe Luo's move of throwing money in front of everyone was ruthless and vicious, killing without spilling blood. At least at this moment, many disciples of the first-rate forces in the hall were already staring unkindly at the Sumera bag at Qin Hao's feet. I've already said that you can't afford it. Furthermore, I'm not selling it. How could Qin Hao not see through Changhe Luo's evil intentions? He looked at Kei, and said, Girl, let's go. We shouldn't have been led to the Wenhua Park by that traitor. What kind of lousy place is this? Roar. The dog spirit groaned and stood up on its hind legs, opening a path for Qin Hao. Stop right there, did I say you could leave? Changhe Luo's eyes narrowed. Whoosh. The disciples of the spirit beast sect lined up in a row, blocking Qin Hao and Kei. What? You have the advantage of numbers. Are you going to force me? Chapter 1245. There was an old man beside Ning Chao Fan. From his appearance, the old man looked to be around 60 years old, but his actual age was probably over 100 years old. He wore a white crown on his head, and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. His back was straight, and he didn't look old at all. His whole person was full of vigor, and he gave off a sharp feeling. At this time, Ning Chaofan was particularly depressed. He entered the Wenhua garden, but didn't go to the main hall. After greeting the guards, he went straight to the main building, the Wenhua Pavilion, to find the clan elder. Then, the two of them hurried to the Jinghua garden in the east of the city to secretly gather information. They did all this because they were afraid of messing up Qin Hao's important matter. However, when they returned, they couldn't find Qin Hao. There was a commotion in the main hall. They came to take a look and saw the scene in front of them. It seemed that their teacher had been suppressed. The ones who suppressed their teacher were actually the servants of the Ning family and the spirit beast sect. Qin Hao saw Ning Chaofan's expression and the clan elder beside him and guessed something. His unfilial disciple didn't forget about him, but rather went to do business. At this moment, Qin Hao looked at Jia He with a smile. "My young master?" Jia He was startled. Of course, he wouldn't forget the young city lord of Golden Light City. However, a month ago, his young master went to comprehend the Coiling Dragon Wonder, and the Coiling Dragon Wonder suddenly collapsed, causing a great tragedy in the southern region. Many disciples of the sect went missing or died tragically, and Ning Chaofan was also involved. Although the city lord was still looking for him, in Jia He's opinion, he was definitely dead. After all, the entire residence was shrouded in a haze. If it wasn't for the auction, it was very likely that they would be holding a funeral for Ning Chaofan. Qin Hao publicly mentioned Ning Chaofan. Was he trying to bring bad luck to the Ning family? Of course, Jia didn't dare to say that Ning Chaofan was unlucky. His eyes were mournful as he loudly reprimanded. "What do you mean by this? The entire residence knows that my young master met with misfortune and died a heroic death. Are you looking at the Ning family as a joke and exposing our scars?" Qin Hao almost laughed out loud. This Jia He was awesome. As for Ning Chaofan himself, when he heard the words funeral, his face turned as black as the ashes at the bottom of a pot. Even the family elder furrowed his eyebrows. The city lord hadn't announced that the young master had died, but the Ning family servants believed that the young master had died. Could it be that he was looking forward to Ning Chaofan's death? It was easy to imagine what Ning Chaofan was feeling right now. "Steward, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want." "How do you know that eldest young master Ning has passed away?" Qin Hao said with a smile, winking at Ning Chaofan. Immediately, Ning Chaofan's dark face turned even uglier. He wanted to see how Jia He would respond. In reality, Jia He didn't dare to answer. The question was too sharp. Did he really have to admit that Ning Chaofan was dead in front of everyone? The city lord hadn't announced it, so he didn't have a right to do so. "Steward Jia, there's no need to waste your breath on this person. He obviously humiliated the Ning family on purpose and came to the Wenhua Park to cause trouble. Elder One of the Spirit Beast sect came out to help." Jia He nodded and avoided the topic of Qin Hao. His voice was cold as he said, "You came to the Wenhua Park to cause trouble and slander the Ning family. Are you prepared to pay the price? Men, cut off his arms and legs, cut out his tongue, and throw him out. There's no need for the Ning family to do it. The Spirit Beast sect is willing to do it for you." Elder Wan. Chang Hello looked at Elder Wan. Elder Wan stepped off the ground and performed the great rock's spreading wings move. He raised his arms high and landed on Qin Hao's head. He didn't attack K-Er. He knew very well that Qin Hao was K-Er's master. Of course, he had to subdue the master first and break the contract with the magical beast. Only then could K-Er belong to Chang Hello. The elder of the Spirit Beast sect made his move. His body shone with an emperor-level light. All the martial artists in the hall held their breaths and scattered, afraid that they would be accidentally injured. Jia He smiled sinisterly and looked coldly at Qin Hao. His expression seemed to say, "Provoke me? Bastard, go to hell." Boom! Just as Elder One made his move, another wave of pressure followed closely. This wave of pressure was incomparably powerful. It rolled in from outside and heavily crushed Elder Wan's body. Elder Wan, who had leaped high, seemed to have been hit by an invisible hand. His body sank, and his head was buried under Qin Hao's feet. It was a very grand and spectacular sight. It was as if he was kneeling before Qin Hao. The scene was strange. What's going on? What the hell? I can't bear to watch. The martial artists never imagined that a core elder of the Spirit Beast sect would kneel before a low-level martial artist. Could it be that he sprained his waist? Did he fail? They didn't dare to do anything. This sect's face had been lost on the streets. In fact, the one who secretly made a move was naturally the elder of the Ning family. Who dares to be so presumptuous? Get out here! Seeing this, the other two elders of the Spirit Beast sect roared in anger. Following the direction of the aura, they simultaneously slapped at the position of the elder of the Ning family. The aura from their palms condensed into two swift golden palm prints. Since when did the Spirit Beast sect have the right to be arrogant in the Ning family's Wenhua Park? The spirited elder spoke in a low voice. His sword-like eyebrows raised, and the two golden palm prints were shattered. They weren't even qualified to get close to him. Subsequently, the elder's body flickered, and a wave of aura swept towards the two elders of the Spirit Beast sect. The two elders looked dignified. Knowing that their opponent's cultivation was high, they joined hands without hesitation and slapped forward with four palms. Boom! A tremor spread, and the aura was shattered. The two elders of the Spirit Beast sect spat out blood. They staggered and almost squatted on the ground. Their joint attack was still defeated. However, they knew that their opponent was still holding back. Otherwise, not only would they spit out blood, but they would also be blasted through the hall. The two elders lay on the street as corpses. 8th-stage primitive emperor. May I ask who you are? The two elders looked dignified. They couldn't be bothered to wipe off the blood and cup their hands in respect. At this moment, everyone in the hall looked behind them and saw Ning Chaofan and the Ning family's elder. Jiahe's body trembled, and he almost knelt on the spot. His face was filled with horror, and he said fearfully, "Eldest young master, please forgive me." Ning Chaofan had returned alive. Not only was Steward Jia frightened, but everyone else was. The coiling dragon wonder had collapsed, and the disciples of various sects had been killed or injured. Nearly 100 people had gone missing. However, the eldest young master of the Ning family had returned safely, and he looked unscathed. Could it be that he had obtained an opportunity from the coiling dragon wonder? Ning Chaofan's face was cold, and he didn't pay any attention to Steward Jia. The Ning family's elder also didn't look at the people of the Spirit Beast sect. Both of them stepped forward and walked to Qin Hao. "Teacher, I've wronged you. It's my fault." Ning Chaofan bowed and said, "Whoosh." Everyone was shocked by this action. Teacher? The low-level martial artist who was driven away by the Ning family, oppressed by the Spirit Beast sect, and even faced the danger of being killed, was the teacher of the Golden Light City's young master? Oh my God! Shocking. Everyone present knew that Ning Chaofan had been cultivating formations and refining since he was a child, and his attainments in both were not shallow. He was recognized as the #1 genius of Golden Light City, and he actually had a teacher, and a low-level martial artist at that. Boom! Jiahe's mind shook, and he knew he was in trouble. However, an even more shocking scene was yet to come. "Mister, you came from afar and protected my Chaofan's safety. Yuan has already informed old man of this. When Huayuan has been rude, please forgive us." The Ning family's elder also bowed. The Yuan he spoke of was the black-clothed martial artist who had lost an arm at the coiling dragon wonder. Just as Ning Chaofan said, they had to set up tents and sleep on the street tonight. "Now it's your turn." Ning Chaofan rolled his eyes and coldly stared at the kneeling Jiahe. The culprit of this situation was this idiot. If he hadn't turned a blind eye and allowed Changhe Lo to be unscrupulous, the Golden Light City branch wouldn't have had the chance to break off relations with the Spirit Beast sect.